So they've been operating, other not. I just asked that, especially as this is supposed to be cleanup, it's defined much better, and that within the city, the enforcement is, and the function of how this is actually executed is very clear, especially between the different departments when it comes to the difference between business license code and planning code. It seems like there's a lot of confusion even within the city departments, and definitely us licensees and small business owners. There's places that have opened 50 plus years, and people go, you need a special use permit or a conditional use permit to the same things you've done for the last decades, and others open new and they're told they're in different districts. I don't know that I have an opinion on it, other than it's been very confusing. A lot of different business owners and to different people within the city. The other thing I would say when I look at language, in terms of who has an entitlement or not, they're conforming and non-conforming. If you have the entitlement already, you're conforming, but
Sir,
in other words, you're non-conforming. The onus needs to be on the business or landowner to prove that they have the entitlement, even if they haven't seen operations.
Sir, can you please wrap up? You're about 20 seconds over time.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
No one else has hands raised.
Okay. We will bring it back to the chambers. Is anyone in chambers wanting to speak on general public comment at this time? Seeing none, we will close item 3 and move to item 4. Which is approval of minutes. We'll start with item 4 point approval of the Reno City Planning Commission regular October 2nd, 2024 meeting minutes.
Commissioner Meyer, motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Becerra.
Look, we got a second, right? We have a motion, a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. We will close item 4.1 and move to item 4.2. Approval of the Reno City Planning Commission regular October 16th, 2024 minutes. We have a motion.
Commissioner Becerra, motion to approve.
Commissioner Romero, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously. We'll now close item 4 and move to item 5, public hearings. And we'll start with item 5.1, LDC 5-00003, 2400 West 7th Street. Looks like we will get a presentation from staff.
Hello, thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, my name is Leah Picotti, and I am Associate Planner with City of Reno Development Services. This evening, I am presenting an application for a major site plan review and tentative map at 2400 West 7th Street. The subject site is located just north of the I-80. It's near the intersection of Everett and 7th Street. It is a 3.72 acre site, and today's request is for two things. One, tentative map to allow for a 28 lot single family residential subdivision, and two is a major site plan review to allow for cluster development. Here you can see the zone district. The subject parcel there in the middle of the screen is a single-family residential. It does allow for 8 units per acre. And as you can see, the majority of the surrounding area is also that same single-family designation. Key issues that were analyzed during this request were the overall site design, compatibility with surrounding developments and uses, master plan policy guidance, public utility infrastructure, drainage, and tree preservation. So regarding the overall site design, these lots are going to range from about 3,200 square feet to about 5,000. The average lot is going to be about 3,700 square feet. Additionally, in the F8, we would be looking at lot sizes of somewhere around 6,000 or 7,000 square feet, which is consistent with all the surrounding development. This site will have approximately 8,000 square feet of landscaped common open space. We're proposing 4 parking spaces per unit. That would be 2 inside of the garage and 2 in the driveway. It also does allow for on-street parking. The width of that cul-de-sac there is wide enough to allow for that. So staff didn't have any concerns with parking on this particular case. A homeowner association equivalent will be created to maintain all of the landscaping in these common areas. Additionally, these 2 areas right over here are going to be landscaped common area, and they're going to put a couple of benches in there. I will also have a landscape parkway along 7th Street, which will increase the pedestrian safety in that area. There's also a current bus stop out front, and will be temporarily moved for for a building and then relocated. There's been a concern that that's going to be removed, and I just want to assure everybody it's not going to be moved. The applicant has requested to waive the internal landscaped parkway, and what you see there is on screen is no internal landscape parkway. And we have asked that they attempt to save viable pine trees. I see a condition of approval in there that requires them to be checked by an arborist and determine their viability. These are pictures of some of those pine trees that are existing on the site. Again, regarding overall site design, we're looking at two-story homes, a 28-foot height. Those homes will range square footage from about 1,800 to 2,400 square feet. These three designs that you see up here were provided in the application. However, do not meet the ground floor interest or the standard street image features of Reno Municipal Code. So we've worked with the applicant and they agreed to add some windows into the garage doors to increase that ground floor interest. And then they're incorporate two of the following, which would be varied setbacks, varied front setbacks, enhanced landscaping in the front yard, paths to the front door, or additional structural articulation. And whichever they decide to implement here will be part of final design. Regarding compatibility, the applicant has offered 16 to 22-foot buffer adjacent to lots 1 through 10, 5-foot buffer adjacent to 11. We have asked that they fully landscape those rear yards along the western boundary, and you will see there is a condition of approval in there for that. And we have asked that they apply additional design elements to the rear facades of lot 1 through 10 so that it doesn't end up just being a blank wall in the back of that home that then the people along Everett are just looking into a backyard that's devoid of anything. So we've limited hours of construction, which is typical with anything that's adjacent to a residential zoning district. A lot of words on this screen. This is master plan guidance. There's basically a couple of things I want to point out here. And one is that the master plan is designated this area as single-family neighborhood. So you'll see the SF designation on some paperwork in your packet. Also, per the structure plan of master plan, it's located in a central neighborhood, and 7th Street is considered a neighborhood corridor. It has some additional policy and goals that we'd like to meet for that. So everything that you're looking for looking at on the left-hand side that's kind of in a green color there, those are all the master plan policies that this application fulfills. And everything looking at on the right-hand side in the red are ones that it doesn't fulfill. So this was a tough application to review, especially when looking at master plan policies and whether or not it conforms to our master plan. And a lot of it doesn't conform to is that neighborhood character or the general guidelines for the neighborhood. So regarding parking, we want those to be located behind the primary structure. Garage orientation should be away from the street. We'd like to see gradual transitions between higher density residential developments and these neighborhood corridors. We want to see more outdoor gathering spaces, courtyards, community gardens, swimming pools, things like that. And again, transitions and the preservation of lot patterns. As you could see in the zoning map, I mean, this is consistently 6,000, 7,000 square foot. We don't see anything like this in the neighborhood. The flip side of that is that it is currently an unused property. We are looking for infill in this area and redevelopment. They will provide a tree canopy. We asked that they orient the building along 7th Street towards 7th Street, which you saw in that they're not. They're oriented inward, but they'd be, should this be approved with the condition of approval. It offers some other housing options in this area. So a lot of competing policies, this one. And then I'm going to do something that I don't normally do, which is I'm going to go through all these findings. And we have a lot of findings in this particular case. So first set of findings is going to be our general review criteria. This is looking at consistency with the Reno master plan. And staff reviewed and analyzed all these things, and what we've basically come up with is that it is consistent with some plans, goals, policies, strategies, and we tried to weigh those competing policies. Is it compliant with Title 18? Yeah, it meets the minimum RMC standards. So in other words, this came in for a building permit right now and no discretionary review was required, it would probably be approved. It does those. To mitigate the traffic impact, yeah, I'm going to put the left turn pocket in. The project is really going to have a minimal impact on the level of service in this area. 28 homes is minimal compared to what we have in the surrounding area. And I do believe they're going to provide a safe environment. That landscape probably will improve the environment for pedestrians and people on bicycles in the area. Here we have the tentative map findings. Public services and utilities are available. Yes, it's an infill project. All the services and utilities are available. And does it comply with the master plan, Reno Municipal Code, and Nevada revised statutes? Kind of. It complies with some of the master plan policies. It meets the minimum RC standards, and it does comply with Nevada revised statute. Major site plan review findings. Is the design compatible with surrounding development? Well, the design of the subdivision is functional. However, the product itself does differ from the surrounding development. The design consistent with development standards. Again, if they send it for building code, our planners who review these type of applications would probably approve it. It's reasonably compatible with the surrounding development as conditioned. As conditioned, additional mitigation has been recommended, including a buffer and additional landscaping and enhanced sign standards. Right. Not going to be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. I can't imagine that once developed noise, smoke, or dust, vibration, illumination, other hazards would be present, would all be mitigated. Here's the tough ones. These cluster development findings. So there's 3 findings for cluster development. And the first one is that the clustering proposal compared with more traditional site development plan better attain policies and objectives of this article, such as providing more open space, preserving existing trees and vegetation coverage, preserving view corridors, preserving set of environmental areas such as stream corridors, slide areas, wetlands, and steep slopes. Well, you probably realize that none of those things exist on this site. However, the applicant has asserted that the increased buffering on the west side may preserve view corridors better than traditional development with no buffer. Second finding, the clustering proposal have no significant adverse impact on adjacent properties or development, or the applicant has agreed to adopt appropriate mitigation measures, such as edge matching, landscaping, screening, illumination standards, and other design features to buffer and protect adjacent properties from proposed cluster development. While the applicant has agreed to adopt a buffer ranging from 5 to 22 feet, plus the 20-foot rear setback, but just for comparison, buffering between varying sizes of single-family resident parcels would be 30 feet, plus the residential yard setback. And number 3, the cluster proposal meets all the other applicable requirements set forth in this article, other applicable ordinances or regulations. Well, again, it complies with some of the master plan policies, it meets the minimum municipal code standards, and complies with another revised statute. That completes my presentation. Recommended motion is on board, and as always, I'm available for questions, and the applicant's representative is here to follow up with a presentation of their own. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Looks like we'll presentation from the applicant.
All right. Thank you, Casey, for the record. I'm with Wood Rogers. I'm representing applicant AMH. Try not to be too repetitive, but I'm going to go over some of the issues and the things we faced, and go give you a little more detail of how we came up with the site design. So just to give you a little more context about the site does have 2 access points on 7th Street. It's currently a church, and so there is traffic and everything that goes on and access in and out of the site, but a majority of the parcel is currently undeveloped. Being this as an infill site, we understand that there is going to be sensitivities, especially with surrounding neighbors, and so we were taking that consideration from a design standpoint, and before doing prior to our due diligence, something that we were keenly aware of and wanted to make sure that we incorporate that into design. Another portion of this project is the Highland Ditch, which runs along the south part as well as the eastern portion, and then again, there is that RTC bus stop, which is shown on the blue dot. So again, we are requesting a tentative map for an 8-lot subdivision. The cluster development is to reduce lot size to allow the density of the SF8 zone designation, and we are proposing 1.3 acres of common area. So looking at the surrounding area, this whole area, this project site as well as the surrounding neighborhood is zoned SF8. So they have the same zoning designation. And with the SF8 zoning designation, you're allowed to have dwelling units per acre. And with this project size, it goes up to 29 units. So with infill sites, especially within the McCarran, trying to create density in these infill sites, we were trying to get to achieve the great density that we could. However, with the City of Reno code and the SF zoning designation for single-family detached lots, 6,000 square feet is the minimum size, and that just doesn't out. You have to modify the lot standards in order to get that density, even if you're going with the minimum lot size. So looking at what we're proposing compared to Reno standards are, there's the table that's on the left that shows in blue the City of Reno standards, and the ones that are in bold there are the ones we are asking to defer. And so reducing that lot size from 6,000 square feet down to 3,200 square feet is mainly just taking the minimum lot width of which would be a minimum of 60 feet to 35 feet. All the other setbacks will remain the same, and this is to help keep conformance with the neighborhood. We also agreed to reduce maximum height from 35 feet down to 28 feet. And then looking at the SF8 zoning designation and was allowed within a City of Reno code. There's also single-family attached, that's 6,000 square feet per lot, and then single-family attached. Single-family attached would be able to go to native map, and it's the same thing. You're modifying the standards when you go single-family attached. So looking at the reason that pointed us to cluster development, looking at the unique site features of the site, and I kind of had the Highland ditch that's there, but if you also understand that within the S8 zoning designation, cluster development is allowed in any area. On the outskirts of town, and still everything. Cluster development is within the SF8 zoning designation. And the cluster development will allow the modification of lot sizes. So some unique site features that are specific to this site are the topography, as well as the on-site drainage issues. So the western lots currently drain onto the property, and the project site actually drains into the high ditch currently. With your development, we would need to accommodate for those and would not be allowed to discharge onto the highland ditch. Also to take into consideration is the slope. The high point is Everett Drive if you look to the west, and it goes generally from west to east. So lower end is slope towards Highland Ditch. And so when we were proposing this development and taking into account view sheds, which sheds are taken account to, sheds are not protecting city code, but when you're in cluster development, that is consideration of the finding. And so looking at considering view sheds, the farther to the east you can put buildings, then the lower they will be from the properties to the west. So looking at what we have proposed, along the western boundary, we have to put a swell in there to pick up for the lots that are draining onto the site. There's also power lines that are on the western area, so we have to take into consideration the utilities that are in there. And then to the west of lots 2 and 3, there are also some utilities that still need to be maintained. And so this swale, we can't just simply discharge this into West 7th Street, because typically you would be able to do that with any development. However, in West 7th Street, there is no storage infrastructure. And so we retain all the water on site. And so everything that falls on this, including the drainage from west, is going to be retained, these retention ponds that are going to be part of the common area. And we will no longer be charging to Highland Ditch. And when considering view sheds, again, we were trying to be sensitive to the adjacent neighbors and understand that these are proposed smaller lots. However, that foot buffer is not applicable in this case because it's SF8 zoning designation adjacent to SF zoning. And so what we tried to do is give as much buffer as we could between lots so that one property behind them right now, that will continue to be the same. This will just be a common area, open space, and we'll give them separation between the backyards. So if you had a traditional development, single-family detached, you would have typically you would have backyard sharing from those current residents. To the west, we did provide a buffer so that there would be some separation there. And with the additional steps of the rear lot, and in combination with the buffer, that allowed us to put those buildings further to the east and drop them down a little bit farther in elevation. So, and Leanna went over this, so I don't want to reiterate anything here, but we are providing an additional buffer, and when you take into consideration with the rear yard backs, the homes are proposed at about 37 feet from a majority of them along the western boundary. This is almost exactly what is on the western homes now. So it's really, although there's, there's common area and rear yards, the setbacks for the homes are very similar to what's currently being there, are located on the houses to the west. If we were to do this as traditional attached development, you would only have to offset 20 from that property line. If you wanted a single family attached, this would be a side yard setback. Based on the building, it could be anywhere from 5 to 19 feet along the western boundary. Again, putting the house farther to the east allows further separation and elevation. So that, and combination with actually grading down below the existing grade, will drop these houses lower than the existing residence and allowing their separation. And so with two-story home at 28 feet, a majority of these residents will be located lower than the residents to the west. So on-site circulation and traffic, again, this is not very traffic generated. We didn't have to do traffic studies with this, but take into consideration the trips that are generated with the church use, especially on Sunday. This is pretty insignificant impact to 7th Street. We are proposing to do 4 parking spaces per unit, even though code only requires 2. Sidewalks will be divided along not only the streets, but the drives as well, so that people will be able to walk to the houses. And the bus stop, it will still remain on site. It will be temporarily relocated during construction and then put back on site based on RTC feedback. Again, as Leah kind of pointed out here, we have agreed to additional design elements for these buildings, especially those 1 through 10 that are along the western boundary and along West Street there. I would just like to highlight too the conditions that we have agreed to and the applicant has agreed to with it. Typically, City of Reno does require any landscaping in rear lots. These are additions so that they are going to be landscaped at the same standards. The common area would be landscaped, and so that equals 1 tree every 300 square feet and 6 shrubs. And along lots 1 through 10, we've agreed to have this be evergreen trees, and then we're putting an additional tree in there, so there'll be 3 trees per lot on 1 through 10 to help kind of screen this from the adjacent residents to the west. There are existing trees on site, as Leah mentioned, and we have agreed to consult with an arborist prior to any grading or any further construction to see if we can relocate those trees or preserve on site. But altogether, with the requirements and the conditions, we are proposing a minimum of 116 trees on site with all common area, rear yards, as well as the street trees and the front yard landscaping. So I'd also like to point out to the applicant, went to the NAB meeting, and at that meeting, that being an infill site, they realized that there was going to be a lot of comments from the surrounding neighbors, and so they hosted in a neighborhood meeting in September. We also heard additional public comment at the PC meeting where this item was continued. We believe that through the conditions, as well as working with city staff, we really met the concern of the neighbors, as well as agree with the findings of the staff report, and also indicate that the staff report is recommend approval. And just want to highlight again the condition of approval that we have agreed to. So that's my presentation. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you for that. We'll bring it back to the Commission for Disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, I read emails, no disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra. Boy, howdy. Part of my running route, I called and spoke with residents. I met with the applicant's representative, and I reviewed the material.
Commissioner Meyer, I viewed the emails, I've visited the site, and I spoke to the applicant's representative.
On Zoom.
Yeah, Commissioner, so I live a quarter mile away. So familiar with the site, I spoke to the applicant representatives, and I received emails.
Commissioner Delgar, I am familiar with the site and I read the emails.
Commissioner Armstrong, I'm familiar with the site and I received emails. That will move to public comment. I actually have a hand for requests to speak. Do we have any wishing to speak via Zoom?
Do not have any on Zoom with hands raised.
Great. I will move to the request to speak forms. We'll start with Liz Knott. You'll have 3 minutes. Please get your name for the record when you're ready.
Liz Knott. Good evening. I live at 2620 Everett Drive since July 1st of 1976. I am speaking in opposition to the Wood Rogers plan for 2400 West 7th Street. I appreciate your allowing my neighbor to speak at your meeting in October, since public notices had already been sent for this case. The commission had no discussion nor any action that evening. The Wood Rogers map shows our existing neighborhood back fences are nearly double the length of their proposals. My home is 1,878 square feet. My home takes approximately 1/4 of my parcel. Ratio is 1/23.95. My neighbors spoke to you last month. I thought they had clearly stated that the Rogers plan was unacceptable. Was Jim Smith at 2575 wrong when he stated the density of the houses on this plot of land looks nothing like the adjacent neighborhoods? Was Barbara Carosa at 2585 wrong when she stated cluster designation under the City of Reno's municipal code is being used for this project when it is clearly not compliant? Was Jay Harvey at 2605 wrong when he said that a cluster development is meant to protect a natural resource or unique signature? Was TJ wrong when he said that it is impossible for the proposed southwest common area to have a single access point shown in plans as a 5-foot buffer and is designated as a drainage channel and is American Disabilities Act accessible and is to serve as a buffer between the property lines? For 57 years, a church has graced this sacred land with cemetery to the east. Have the church and its property remain as is means natural habitat continue to live in the place and at peace. Finally, have they made enough sufficient changes? Sounds like may have. I don't know. If not, please deny. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Whoa, I have 5
you.
seconds.
Well done. Thank you.
All right.
Next, we have Barbara Carosa.
Hello, my name is Barbara Rosa. I have a short but very impactful statement. The proposed development has been a concern for neighbors since its initial presentation relative to the designation stated in the application of a cluster development. It just does not fit within the parameters of current municipal code. And that's the key to this whole situation. Guidelines, and it exceeds standards. This fact alone negates the development proposal. This glaring inaccuracy is a concern. This designation was ever used to begin with and is, in fact, a petition by property owners was initiated, which all of you have in your packets. Concern by homeowners for the proposed development has been very vocal in prior meetings, which have been cited, the NAB meeting and the October Planning Commission meeting, relative to municipal code, and we need to focus on that. We all live by rules, regulations, and laws in our everyday lives. This is no different. Presentations pointed out in public comment by homeowners state facts for cluster recognition, which again the development lacks. You either meet the requirements, follow municipal codes, or you don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have TJ.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is TJ, 2605 Drive, speaking in opposition to 7th. Early on in this process, Ms. Picotti told on the phone, I agree, this does not meet criteria of cluster development. Since the state, the revisions of the plan have been minor. I've spoken to developers in the area who've also said this is not eligible for cluster. When you read the definition of cluster development and look at the proposal, it's clear it doesn't meet criteria. I keep being told it's a gray area. There's only a gray area if you allow it. I've been in law enforcement for over 15 years, 10 years as a peace officer sworn to uphold the law. Reno Municipal Code is law. Cluster developments are intended to protect a unique site feature of natural resource. The definition has a few mandatory components. Protect something, provide open space, and provide a more gradual transition to the unincorporated county and public lands. There is a unique site feature. The last component, transition to public lands, is never addressed. The land is bordered by homes, a canal, and a cemetery. The open space was only added as an afterthought, as it has no user access point. Woodruff has attempted to say they are eligible for development because they are protecting view shed and providing common open space. Arguing the unique site feature they're protecting is sheds is laughable. First, what views? The views from the property or the views from our homes? The one Wood Rogers told us we're not entitled to. Views from our property are clearly gone, because that's what 28-foot two-stories will do. And the views from our homes, well, I've used 28-foot tall ladder at the elevation of the Highland Ditch, lowest point, to confirm that the city views will be erased. It's so funny that Wood Rogers says they are preserving views through setbacks and grading down. Original plans haven't changed here, after they've been reduced to the setbacks. If preserving view sheds was going to be your main contingent point of approval, the necessary component of a cluster development should not have been mentioned in the original plans. It's not mentioned because they never intended to meet the definition of a cluster development. SF8 zone requires 6,000 square foot lots. These lots are small, 3,200 square foot. The component never originally addressed was providing usable common space. After they were called out in previous reports for missing this element, they have added small areas near lots 10 and 11. If you review the submitted topo maps, which were on the screen, and drainage reports, you will see both designated areas are midpoints of runoff from western properties, also far away from the two retention ponds. The runoff actually runs through 5-foot boundary between properties near lot 11. This is also the only access point to the common area, previously designated as drainage channel. Condition 6 of approval says this must be an 80 accessible path to the common area. How can the 5-foot area fit as a major drainage channel and a accessible path? It cannot. At the end of the day, it should be painfully obvious to anyone looking at the project. The only reason Wood Rogers implemented cluster development is simply to reduce the required lot sizes mandated by SF8 zoning. Their motives are clear. This is not about protecting or resources or providing space as intended by cluster development. It's about making more homes zoning permit. Again, there are no natural resources, sheds, or unique site features that qualify for protection. There's no gray area. Commissioners, as I understand, to rule for the findings means the Planning Commission has made a decision based on established facts. Justify the findings. Wood Rogers not
Sir, can you please
facts.
wrap up your comments? You're about
Yes.
25 seconds over.
Wood Rogers did not establish the facts, asking you to complete their work for them. They have justified this development, and neither should you. Thank you.
Next, we have Ashley Hart.
My name is Ash Harvey. I live at 2605 Everett, and I'm speaking opposition of development. I want to start by saying I echo all the sentiments of previous neighbors. I do not think this is the criteria of cluster development, and I don't think it should be approved as is. I would like to reiterate code is law, and passing something because perceived gray area will open up both Wood Rogers and the city of Reno to potential legal action. However, my primary focus today is to shed light on the character of the developer and Rogers. It is my firm belief that they are using scare tactics, bullying tactics, and being deceitful in an attempt to get anyone in their way out of the picture. As I've told my husband several times, they're leaning into they're the devil you know and the one you don't. What do I mean by that? Painting themselves as people who want to come in and better the community. They've stated that they want to help the housing crisis when so many can't afford to live. With all due respect, getting 28 overpriced rental in a neighborhood known for being a working class doesn't really help anyone I know who's facing an economic hardship. But on to the specifics. At a school board meeting, they led with slides showing with a quick zoning change, another developer could come in and put in a complex or duplex. This was a scare tactic, and I'll admit that it worked. Several of the neighbors talked about standing down after that. That wasn't until I spoke with the associate planner, who assured me that everybody have to jump through hoops. That code is there for a reason. Also, if the view are going to be preserved, why are we acknowledging that the trees for homes 1 through 10, there's a buffer as well? Also in regard to the sheds, that only applies if we're standing on top of our roofs, and I don't know many of you stand on top of your roofs only. Several weeks ago, a neighbor saw a gentleman in the field. He went to speak with him, and the gentleman said that he represented a developer and reiterated his desire to want to with the neighbors. He told the particular neighbor that they were going to put single-story homes along the western boundary, which was ironic because this was a few days before a hearing. In fact, that same neighbor is here tonight because he still firmly believes in the word of that gentleman. This has very clearly been proven to be not true. So, what's the devil that I'd be afraid of? In closing, I want to say that where morality might be gray, code is black. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Tim Smith.
Tim Smith, for the record. Want to start by saying I'm not anti-development. You may pick that up. That's my bread and butter of how I make a living. But what I am for is honest and fair development, which I believe this development is trying to avoid. Initial review of the plans, it does not appear to meet the definition of a cluster development. It comes across more as a use of cluster development as a loophole in order to build more rentals rather than to provide any benefits to the community, such as the view sheds, things like cluster development in the municipal code. State cluster development is urged to support the protection of sensitive natural resources. View sheds are unique site features, promote fire safety within wildland interface, provide opportunities, shared common open space, protect documented wildlife corridors, provide a more gradual transition to unincorporated county and public lands. Of the items listed in the code, the plan does not clearly meet any of these. View sheds not preserved, the entire lot is being utilized. There's no natural resources identified that they wish to preserve, no old growth trees, although they did mention that. Not sure any of those would be saved based on the layout of the plan. There is no gradual transition unincorporated county. It is in the middle of a neighborhood that was established 50 years ago. There is no wildlife corridor protected on the lot and no wildlife concern. The open space provided is not used by anyone in the area. There are retention ponds or between the property line, the house's back fences. I don't know about you guys, but I don't like walking between people back fences. Development is deemed as acceptable as a clear development despite not really falling into the definition. Code, they are required to adopt appropriate mitigation measures. These are defined edge matching, landscaping, screening, illumination, standards, and other design features to buffer or protect adjacent properties from the proposed cluster development. These mitigation standards are not all defined in the clear provision of the code as clear-cut standards as what those are, but defer to the single-family adjacent standards to get a more clear picture of how transitions are completed. The developer say that this section doesn't apply since there's no change of zone district from development to development, which would make sense if followed the base development standards. Its very nature, the neighborhoods would match. Here is not the case. Parcel size is smaller, rear yards do not match. Each house, the existing neighborhood would now have 2 houses behind them. I would argue that in the cluster provision, there is not a clear standard of buffering, but the word buffer mentioned, we refer to other areas of the code, which would be in the adjacency standards. The code gives 3 options: parcel size matching, yard match, and buffering. Right now, they have 17-foot buffer, at least behind my yard, and rear property line to rear property. And the adjacency standards code requires 30 feet fully landscaped, 100 feet if not landscaped. Currently, yards do not match, parcel sizes are not the same. If I could have 20 more seconds, 30 more seconds. These are standards by which the development should be held to. It should be of approval to meet one of the transition requirements. Everyone needs to follow the city code. It is meant to protect both residents and set standards to keep the city consistent. Approval of this development as it is currently on would be a disservice to the existing residents and a significant impact on the existing neighborhood.
Thank you. I actually have no more requests to speak. Is anyone else in the chamber waiting to speak on this item? You interested? Can you fill out a request to speak form and hand it to our secretary, and then come up and state your name? You'll have 3 minutes.
Speak and then give after.
Okay. You can fill it out after, okay.
Hello, my name is Ariana, and we live near the part where we're trying to build the houses. I don't know exactly the location, but just a warning, there are cats back there living in the shed. So those animals either need to go find a permanent home because maybe I feel like they're like strays. There's lots of them, like lots. And I don't want to hand sanitizer in their eyes. So we either remove cats or let them stay in their night home.
Very well done. Thank you so much for your comments. Anyone else in the chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will bring back to the committee for questions. Commissioner Ryer.
I have a question for Leah, please. Thank you for your very well detailed presentation. I'm curious if a major deviation would have been an option given the constraints, or a variance given the constraints, the ditch and the wrenching.
Thank you, Commissioner Rommeyer, for record, Leah Picotti. You cannot ask for a major deviation from lot standards or density, and staying with the variance.
Was the only tool, I suppose we could call it, the cluster in this case?
Could have been a cluster, it could have come in with an SPD, like a specific land district. They basically wrote their own zoning code for this site.
Were there other site designs that could have met a code intention?
The site design that you see is the site design that was submitted.
Thank you.
Commissioner Becerra.
Thank you, Chair. You don't have to look over. You're new. Leah, I guess I'll just piggyback off of Commissioner Rohr's questions. Kind of just start, is there a compare project or two that we can reference while we're having this discussion deliberation that's very similar to this project?
We have other cluster developments that we've done. A good example of one of those is at the intersection of Moana and Loomis. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. There is a cluster development there that has some really little houses that they front Loomis. With the backyard is the garage, and you enter from the backside. So in that particular case, those retain that street characteristics they fit in with the neighborhood, things like that.
Okay, great.
And I have there's other cluster developments in the area, but I've never seen anything that's really comparable to this. Generally, when I'm looking at cluster developments, excuse me, I'm looking at a much larger parcel, with actual clusters of development throughout that parcel. And in that case, that would be, when I get that, and preserving view sheds and things like that, I'm generally thinking, if you have a large site and you have a slope on one side, you would apply the cluster development and the hillside design standard so that you stagger homes in one section of the parcel while retaining the rest of it as an open space concept. That's generally what we see with cluster development.
Great, thank you. Thanks for my question. I was looking for a project that in one-to-one or that's in parity with this one. Doesn't sound like that's really the case.
Correct.
So my follow-up with that is Chapter 18.09.204 of Reno Land Development Code defines cluster development as but for edification, moderate density attached or detached development that is designed to protect sensitive areas to allow for common open space. So what specific benefits this project offer to current residents in the broader community being presented?
That's a great question for the applicant.
Sure.
Yeah, so, with the cluster development, I think a unique site feature that we are protecting is the fact that, even this is an infill site, we do have the properties to the west drain on this, and this typically not what you see, especially when you see an infill site. And the fact that West 7th Street does not have storm facilities and that we cannot drain into the Highland, these are the unique site features that we were accommodating, and so protecting as well with stormwater and storm quality and flowing. When you have all the reason why you're not allowed to discharge into Highland ditches, because when you have this multiplier effect of all these different areas draining into the ditch, this could be a potential issue downstream, people downstream of the Highland ditch. And so that is the site feature we are accounting for and protecting.
Okay, I will pause there. I have more, but make sure for others folks.
We'll circle back. Commissioner Villanueva, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. I have a question for the applicant. The roundabout, or not roundabout, but the cul-de-sac, excuse me, the cul-de-sac emergency vehicle, is there any concern there?
Yeah, so Eric Key for the record. Reno Fire was able to review this, and because of the length of the cul-de-sac, from what I understand, there's no need for secondary access, and it's designed to be able to accommodate for on-site parking as well, for a fire to be able to get in, turn around. The private drives are also designed to City of Reno fire standards as far as the length of them and being able to access for emergencies.
Okay, and then one of your visuals during your presentation, you highlighted two entry points. Can you pull that?
Yeah, for the existing site?
So for the development, is there only one entry point?
Yeah, there's one entrance. It's that single street. It's designed to the Reno standards. And so it's basically just a cul-de-sac that lead into this.
Okay.
It's going to be in alignment with the street that's directly across from 7th Street.
Okay, and again, no issues with emergency fire, has that anything, there's issues. The other question, sorry, I wrote this down. The rear of the houses in the development, and then the rear of the rear properties, is there going to be a space, is there a fence behind and then another fence, or are we going to have a gap in between the two fences?
Yeah, so there's the property's existing owner's existing fence, and then there will be a grade separation, and then a little swale, and then there will be a fence, and then along the northern part, a new fence for the new lots, and along the part there is a little wall as well there.
So there will
It will
be
be fenced back rear yards.
I'm sorry, say that one more.
The rear yards will be fenced.
Yeah, but they're going to be in between, there's going to be a gap in the fence for the development for the pre-development homes, and then the fence of the homes that already exist, so there's going to be a gap, right, or?
Yeah,
Almost like
as proposed right now, yes. So I don't know if, the applicant will want to make that's as secure as possible, and that's going to not create any safety issues. So I think that's something that they probably consider going forward, but we're proposing it right now. There's no fence.
As you're proposing it right now, there's no,
gate or fence. between
okay,
that.
so it's just going to be, okay. Is that normal? Just design, from a design, it seems odd that there would be that, but it's not a big deal. I'm just curious. Okay, I do have questions. I'm going to let others speak.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's go to Zoom. Commissioner Delvey, Commissioner Velto, did you have any questions at the time?
Yes, Commissioner Velto, a few questions for the applicant. I want to go back to Commissioner Becerra's question because I too want a better understanding of the clustering development analysis. So I'm looking at the site plan. I'm looking at proposed project as it's laid out, trying to understand how clustering better attains preservation of trees, vegetation, or preserves sensitive environmental areas. Do you have any opinion as to how clustering is applied here would preserve existing trees? It does look to me, looking at the aerial view, that the way the project is outlined, there are some trees that will be maintained through clustering,
Yeah.
but can you help me understand kind of how you're viewing this compliance with clustering?
Yeah, so those trees that are on site along western boundary, AC for the record. Those trees that are on site along the western boundary, which could potentially be preserved. The reasons why we're not calling them out as being preserved is going to need to, one, verify that they are viable, and two, that NV Energy will allow them to maintain. We are, there is a condition there to have certified arborists out there and identify all the trees that are on site and identify any that are going to be viable for preservation.
And then when you're answering Commissioner Sarah's question, you were talking about drainage, and kind of talk a little bit more about how clustering development finding related to drainage, trees, etc. What the analysis necessarily for how it affects drainage?
So with drainage, it's a kind of a twofold, right? With the on retention that you have to provide because of the limitants of draining into the highland and everything, you have to also, that takes up a lot of the development and of the developable area. In order to be able to provide density in this infill site, as well as provide for those accounting for those factors with Highland Ditch, that's what came up with the cluster element for.
Understood. And there's a line in this clustering development analysis that said that compared with more traditional site development plans, what are traditional site development plans would be available aside from what is being proposed?
Yeah, I think thank you for bringing that up, AC, for the record. I think that's kind of maybe something that being misunderstood here too is we're not threatening any other type of development. But when you look at the findings for cluster development, it says compared to a more traditional development. And on the SF8 zone designation, single-family attached is an allowed product. And so that would be a more traditional development as in line with a 6,000 square foot lot. And so when you're talking about setbacks, if you had a single-family attached product that was being proposed, you can put those single-family attached products up 5 feet to 19 feet based on the height structure along that western boundary. And it's the same with the 1,000 square foot lot. If you had a 6,000 square foot lot there, your rear setback would be 20 feet minimum. And so when you're comparing that to what we are proposing with buffer as well as the rear setback, that is the comparison there. So when looking at a more traditional development, does what we are proposing less impact on the surrounding neighborhood? We believe it does.
Thank you. And I want to pivot topics if that's okay.
Sure.
So one of the findings that we should talk about in regard is it has to do with traffic. And I understand that this type of project doesn't have a traffic study. Being just down the street and driving down the set every day, there are a lot of people that drive at high speeds. I don't necessarily think that your project contribute to that, but is there kind of anything that you all can do that otherwise would not happen to allow for there to be either, say, like a stop sign or some sort of kind of a speed radar that would help solve a different problem while we're considering the proposal?
Yeah, Eric, for the record. I don't know if a sign would be appropriate. I think the applicant is understanding that you're right. There is an issue that is along the street. I don't think we'll add to that, and it's not going to go if this development doesn't go through. I'm sure if a stop sign is appropriate or what RTC would deem appropriate, but I think the applicant is open to maybe some type of sign to warn people if they were going too fast or things.
Okay, and would that be an agreeable condition then if we were to approve this, that there's some sort of speed radar posted near the development?
Yeah, I think trying to make sure, I think as long as it's within the standards of what RTC would recommend and the city of Reno, then I think that's something that we would be applicable to.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Del Villar, do you have any questions at this time?
I do. This is Commissioner Del Villar. I think this might be a question for I'm not sure. I'm just curious as to why there are actually sort of two significant things that we're just seeing on within one piece, the map itself and then also the clustering. Is that sort of, and apologies, this is off scope or anything, just trying to get my head around things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Again, Picotti for the word. It's typical. You'll see these kind of projects lumped together, especially when you have tentative map. A lot of times you'll see it along with a conditional use permit, or you might see it with a major site plan review. Usually you'll see it including or things like that.
Yeah, makes sense. And also, just sort of curious, and this sort of piggybacks off what Commissioner Romeyer had been alluding to earlier. How many homes do you put there without the clustering in effect? It sounds like maybe 14. So I'm just eyeballing the math.
Yeah, the math, even though it's technically 8 dwelling units per acre, it doesn't exactly come out to that number, but it's somewhere on what the applicant said, like 27. However, with cluster development does allow for 15% increase in density, so they actually could have gone up to like 34 units in this, which per our master plan policies and infill development, we may have preferred that.
Okay, thank you. That was all I had for
Thanks, Commissioner.
Armstrong, just
Commissioner Velto, you have a follow-up?
just a quick follow on that, because I think I understood that earlier on. So I want to echo what Commissioner Romeyer said, that your presentation was very good tonight on this. It was very well done, so thank you for that. But so you're saying without the clear development, the applicant could still...
Yeah, well, we're looking at different things here. We're looking at lot sizes, which have to be the 6,000 or 7,000, and then we have to look at the density as well. So even though this is single family, there are several different residential type uses that could be allowed, such as an attached product or duplexes or things like that. So that could impact density. If we're just looking at lot sizes, it's like 14, somewhere in there. But if looking at the density that's allowed, we're looking at about 27 units. Cluster development allows the 15% increase, so it could look at 34 units cluster development.
Thank you.
While you're up there, I actually have a question. I guess it's more of a straightforward question, but can you just maybe walk me through how you get to a recommendation of yes on this, right? So you kind of get to it, and I get that it's difficult, but you would kind of point out there's almost like a 50-50 for the sake of arguing, like kind of satisfies the master plan, not really, but there aren't any, I don't think there were clear issues with municipal code or NRS, so the issue is kind of like we're torn on master plan, I don't know, priorities, even though they're not ranked, so that plus, I guess, the issue of the cluster development. Like, how do you get comfortably, I guess, to recommendation? Like, can you explain thought process?
Yeah, I can explain a bit. And to be just totally transparent, I was on the fence. I really could have written this probably as a denial as well. But in the long run, when I started looking at it, I thought, well, okay, some conditions of approval, I think we can get there. I think we can get to a point where we find this compatible. One of the problems with the cluster development is that there's no quantifiable standard in there. So nothing that says they have to double the amount of open space, or they have to provide X number of open space per dwelling unit, or it has to be adjacent to something that would provide open space trails, and there's nothing like that in there. So it's when you're a planner and you're working on something like this, and your applicant, who you work with on a regular basis, asserts, no, it is cluster development. So as you read the staff report, you clearly see where I'm saying maybe it is, and maybe it's not. In weighing the competing master plan policies, like I said in my presentation, it's tough. Because if I recommend denial and I say, well, it doesn't meet these, it does meet all of these. So in look at that, I think overall, it meets a municipal code. Does it meet the intent of code? Does it meet the intent of master plan? That's kind of where you guys come in. I can look at from a code standard, from a black and white standard, and say, if I was reviewing this, would it get approved? And the answer is probably yes, but it's a discretionary review. And when we have these discretionary reviews, we look to you as our body to decide whether the intent is there for this. So when we wrote that code, we intend for this development. When we created master plan policies, was our intent to restrict these kind of developments, or was it to protect these kind of neighborhoods? And so in terms of getting there, you read my staff report, but really it's to you guys.
That is really helpful. I appreciate the eloquent response and a transparent thought process. I have a follow-up question, and I'm sorry if you've explained this and I'm just not getting it, or based on some of their commissioners on questions. What is the reason for a cluster development versus kind of the alternative that you explained? If you're getting the same amount of lots effectively, I understand there's lots, but it's kind of apples to apples, like, for the sake of arguing. So what drives, I guess, like a decision to go for the cluster development? And to your point, why would the city maybe prefer the alternative from a review perspective?
Well, I think that maybe doing a specific plan district for something like this, maybe would not have been viewed as favorable, because that's more of a whole zone change than just a deviation, which I look at the cluster development as a deviation. I don't know. I've done, in my years as planner, I've done a handful of cluster development projects here and in Arizona, and I've never done like this. As I stated, usually when we're talking about protecting use sheds, preserving open space, protecting these wildlife corridors, trails to open space, things like that, we're talking about these larger pieces of property. And in my previous jurisdiction, we were all about the views. And again, view sheds are protected under the code, but people would commonly come in with these larger parcels, and they would develop these homes in clusters on the hillside so that they were preserving each other's views, not necessarily views of the neighbors, but each other's views. And then and because we gave them that opportunity to develop that cluster, they in turn provided all this open space. So I see the cluster development as sort of give and take. And as one of the people up here said, you're providing. So you're getting this, and then you're providing this. And I'm not necessarily sure if it meets the intent. It's a code. I don't know if it's the intent.
It's super helpful. That's all I have for now. Again, I really appreciate it. I'll turn it back to Commission. Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Thank you so much, Leah. I think I know the answer to this question because you just answered, I think, maybe directly with Chair's Armstrong. But I did want to ask, and it might be a question in advance for my fellow commissioners so we deliberate. But how does this project align with the housing goals and policies outlined in the master plan, particularly regarding compatibility, quality of life, and neighborhood preservation? And I'll underscore the last three. And keep in mind that I do try to engage with city council conversations, meetings where they do talk about trying to preserve neighborhood characteristics and so forth. And I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Becerra. I think that my slide that I did on master plan guidance kind of outlines that. I mean, as you could see in that slide, it is meeting several policies related to the SF land use designation. It's meeting some policies related to central neighborhoods, but it's also in direct conflict with some of the policies that are related directly to neighborhoods, general neighborhood policies, central neighborhood policies, and those that are adjacent to that corridor as well.
Great, thank you, Leah.
Does that answer?
It absolutely does. And I'll just pivot to Eric and May. Sure. Thanks, Leah. Eric, maybe an awkward question. I think I have to ask it just because it's brought forth to us, and I'd like to get some clarity on that. But was there any kind of communication with residents, particularly like promises made or things that are above board of this project in order to gain trust?
Eric Hasty, for the record. We had a neighborhood public meeting, and everything we presented to the neighborhood is in your staff report. And I even sent a description to Leah, and I'm kind of surprised to hear those allegations, because I do not feel that in any of that was something that I did or was trying to misleading. I think we presented the facts from the beginning of this, and no, from our standpoint too, it's not like we're trying to be misleading any of this, because our goal is to try to meet the requirements of the master plan, and by providing density in Marin Ring for the area, and providing single-family detached homes in an area that's primarily single-family detached homes, and then going above and beyond doing the applicant's willing to do with the trees to make sure that it does conform, because there is a lot of mature trees in this neighborhood, and by accepting this condition to try to get this neighborhood into conformance with, is something that I think been trying to do from the beginning. So.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I asked that because we had to
I appreciate you
weigh everything, and I think, as you had mentioned, that there's the Reno Municipal Code, and then there's our master plan, and that's kind of the area where we try to really be the collective of reason to everybody else involved, and trying to make sense of it all for neighbors here. Thank you.
Commissioner Villanueva, please.
Great. Okay, you can just stay right here. But I'm going to quickly call staff. I have one question for you. Thank you. Just to clarify, did you say the applicant could build multifamily in this space? It's single-family, but could they build?
It could do an attached product, or they could do like duplexes and triplexes. Those wouldn't be allowed, right? But they could be a permit under discretionary review.
Okay, thank you. For the applicant. So I actually am in favor of multifamily, but we, the applicant, as presented, I'm actually, in favor of this project. However, I'm held up by a couple items here. So you can take me over and get me to see why I should vote in favor of this. Then we may be able to guess. So where I'm being held up is, I'm looking at the code. And I don't know if you can pull this up, anyone can pull it up, but I can read it for you as well. But section 184903 talks about general standard residential districts. And then it goes section A, then subsection 6. It says cluster development. I don't know if you have that in front of you, but it defines cluster development residential zone. And I think we heard definition a couple times tonight, so I'm going to spare you. Then it goes when allowed. Minimum lot size may be reduced through clustering development if applicable decision-making body finds that, and then goes into 3. Do you have that in front of you? by
I'm
any?
trying, I think but I'm trying to figure out where we're at here.
Okay, it's section, again, I'll read off to you. 184903, subsection A, 6.
Can't, what page? Do you have a page?
Yes, I do. It's the development code. It's 4106.
Okay, all right, I got
Cluster.
cluster development. Okay.
So you can go ahead and read that. If you can convince me why you guys can satisfy that, then
Yeah, so when allowed, right, like this cluster development is allowed within SF8 zoning nation. Doesn't matter where on where the city of Reno, F8, it's allowed. And so for when, I think I've tried to for this too, again, and Commissioner Velt's comments too about when you're pairing this to a traditional development, right? Clustering going to be less impactful to the surrounding neighborhood. And I think with the buffering as well as the additional setbacks of the rear yards, we can say that it is. Helping preserve viewing corridors, I understand that that's people's perceptions of views are a little different. I went over that presentation in my slide. And then no adverse impact on adjacent properties, or the applicant has agreed to adopt appropriate mitigation measures such as landscaping, which we have with conditions, screening, which we have with the 3 trees in backyards of lot 1 through 10, and other design features to buffer and protect adjacent properties from the proposed cluster development. I believe that we have through all those with the additional buffer as well as rear setback and the conditions that were added not only to the landscaping, but also to the design features of the homes, and considering everything else that we need to account for with this lot as far as the retention ponds and anything else.
I think one of the items we're going to be talking about later on the agenda, the change of the code. I think with some of those changes, and maybe not these changes we're looking at tonight, but at some point we're looking at more affordable housing and multifamily, things like that. If you guys ultimately got a no day, couldn't you just come back in the future when when the code was updated? I do feel like this is an aligned vision for the future of Reno and what kind of do want to start seeing. Just go back. I'm like, Leah, it's hard for me to fit this into to the space that we looking at here. Is that, what is that an option?
The builder who is applicant on this is single-family detached homes. That's what they do. And so.
Well, that's fine, at that, but we don't know what the future holds as far as the change of the code. I don't know. Maybe somebody else can convince, because I do like the product. I think it would fit really well here, but I go back and forth. Anyone else? Thank you. Nothing further from me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, did you have a question?
I'm ready for discussion.
Okay. Are there any questions from the Zoom attending commissioner this time? Hearing none. Did you have additional questions or can we move into discussion?
You're good.
All right, let's move into discussion. Commissioner Rohrmeyer.
Volunteered for that. I really want to thank the city for liberating so well on this. It is a very challenging case. I see this based on the definition of cluster very much as a stretch. Don't see how this applies as cluster development. And on the same token, I really believe in infill and density. Those things are at odds here. Our design that could have been considered, which would have achieved those mitigation lot match on the west side, were not considered clearly, and higher density perhaps on the east side. So for that alone, I just don't see how this is a cluster development. And yet I could totally support a variance if that was an opportunity, because there are hardships with retention of water that's flowing on the site because of the need for a retention basin, because of existing ditch, because there's no storm drain. I feel like the site has a number of hardships. So I would be interested, I guess it was mentioned that just isn't an option, a variant in this case.
Commissioner Rivera, did you have any discussion?
Sure. Really, just go Commissioner Rohrmeyer's sentiment there. She's always the eloquent voice amongst this body. So are the others. I do agree that it can't make the fine with seeing it as a cluster element. While it meets the bare minimum of municipal code, I don't think that's the bar we want to set. I don't think really meets the broader intent, as I think some of my fellow commissioners mentioned and staff as well. I do applaud the applicant working with staff to try to get there. I'm just there myself though.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lonowabe, did you have any discussion?
No discussion. It was a hard one, but I think I have my decision. Nothing further from me.
Sure, thank you. Commissioner Veldo or Commissioner Dayar, did you have anything for discussion?
Yeah, Commissioner also here. I think I've struggled with this cluster development thing. That's really the only one that I've been struggling with. So I did appreciate the explanation from the applicant insofar as explaining why a more traditional development plan wouldn't necessarily preserve trees, also may not protect stream corridor and other environmental concerns. So the way that they explained how the project and the way it developed may benefit from storm drains and runoff, I think is a reason why we can make the cluster development findings, at least as far as it goes to sub A of the cluster development finding. Beyond that, I think the project is compatible, especially when you're taking into account alternatives could be there, but it's the general findings I can make for the rest of them. So while I understand there might be maybe a agreement with the method at which projects gotten here, I think it's our job to say there was another avenue you could have gone if it can make findings, and I don't think we should require more than what is otherwise required. I'm hearing from Leah and the city's perspective that a lot of these findings can be made. As far as the policy portion, I do think that our job is to try to make policy findings, and for a lot of those, I'm really comfortable making these findings because this allows for more housing, increases densification is something that we strive for as a city. So I feel comfortable making a finding, albeit I'm stuck in cluster development. I will note, though, I do appreciate that the applicant is willing to do things beyond what is required. It's like they would be able to a form of an amendment that would essentially allow for there to be a speed radar put at this location, which I do think is very beneficial to the area in general. And some sort of speed indicator sign would be posted there would overall be beneficial to 7th Street and really help the community. Given what is on the table as an alternative, that they could do densification in the future and that those options are available aside from single family, I think that would be less characteristic of the neighborhood, and that's why I'd be in support of the project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Delrar, do you have any add?
Well, I just nice and glad everybody is very articulated, very much articulated was what in my mind. So I think I am good with the discussion for now. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually will just make some brief comments and then we'll move to decision. But I have a hard time getting there with respect to the cluster development findings specifically. Some of the other things I heard just kind of through the line of questioning with respect to could possibly go one of two ways, and there are issues with respect to intent of the law that make this murky. Like, I typically like to get comfortable with more of a black and white kind of fits or it doesn't, and this is just too gray for me, so I'll be able to support it. And with that, bring it back to the commission. Entertain a motion.
For clarification made from our illustrious
Yeah, go ahead.
minister, we tend to put the motion before us in the affirmative, correct? Or can we modify what's on the screen in favor of something else?
You can. If you do make a motion to recommend a denial, I would just ask that you, for the record, state what findings you cannot make.
Correct. Okay. Happy to make a motion. Before I do, could you do me a solid and pull up that slide, please, that shows the split 50-50 policy findings and thereof?
I sure can.
Thank you. All right. And I make the motion. I get like folks to just kind of sit with this for a minute and say that it comes from the master plan, which we put a time, money, and energy as a city. And it's supposed to be the voice of the people. We do this every 10 or so years, or some number like that. And we're in a pickle, try to fall back something like this, and again be that voice for the community, especially in these gray areas. And we have to live with our neighbors, look them in the eye, and say, yeah, this was an okay decision based on these things, or this was not an okay decision. And I don't know. I guess I'll ask folks to say, hey, if I were in this situation, would I be okay with compromising that list on the right? And if so, what are we getting in return for this project? And so far, I haven't really seen that off in a really good way. So with my motion, I guess could I just negate the affirmative, or can I'm essentially denying.
So if you want to put the motion back up, Leah.
Oh.
So essentially, if you could make a recommendation based on non-compliance with applicable findings, I move to deny the tentative major site plan review. That's the change you would make, and then, as I mentioned, state what findings you're able to make.
I think the applicable findings that you mentioned, so, based on compliance, sorry, in the case of DC 25-00003, 2400 West Street, based upon compliance with the applicable findings as presented, I move to deny the tentative map major site plan review subject to the conditions in staff report for to meet findings as presented. Are there certain that you want to outline?
I think saying is you want to identify at least one specific finding you cannot make.
Sure. I mean, we listed in that.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to pick one, or?
The findings, I'm sorry. Are you just going with master plan?
Yeah. Well, because I can't make the findings in accordance with the current master plan and presented in the staff report.
I have a question.
Please.
If we have different findings we can't make, do we make the vote based on the motion with findings we could make? How does that work?
I'll have legal chime in, but I would assume that as part of discussion, you could note any additional findings that you make.
This is Jen Mata, that's correct. If you agree with the motion to deny, but on a different basis, it's helpful if you include that different basis.
Does someone modify or make addendum?
Sorry, is that something we can just address a roll call vote? So we get a motion, a second, and we do a roll call. Someone has a difference of opinion with respect to the motion. Is that the appropriate time to do it? Or would it be as part of second?
Are you talking a difference of opinion with respect to a motion to approve or deny, or are you talking difference of opinion to the basis for
So
the motion?
if we have a motion to deny at present that was read into record, someone may make a second. If the person makes the second, doesn't have any issues with how the motion was presented, move to a roll call vote. And someone else is voting for denial, but they want to make clear they have a different basis or lack of finding for that denial. They do that as part of a roll call vote, or are you wanting it as own function of the motion in the second?
No, they could do it as part of the roll vote.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hopefully that helps everybody.
May I clarify my motion? Just going to write it out.
Sure.
So just to clarify that I am in denial for lack of adherence to the master plan and the definition of cluster development as presented this evening.
We have a motion.
Commissioner Villanueva, second.
We have a motion, a second, sorry, and a second. So can we get a roll call, please?
Carrie Romar.
Aye, but on the basis of cluster finding number 1.
Christina VR.
I agree with motion to deny.
Commissioner Villanueva. Yes, because I cannot make the finding cluster development. Commissioner Velto. Commissioner Armstrong.
Yes, and specifically only with respect to the fine related to cluster development. So motion carries, sorry. Motion carries, and before we close the item, I'm going to reappeal process the record. Any final action, not including recommendations or failure to take action at the Planning Commission, may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor, or a city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal together with these must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days, starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. With that, we will close on 5.1 and open item 5.2, LDC 24-00011 Arrow Lee zoning map amendment. We'll get a presentation from staff.
We wait the room to clear out, or go ahead and go?
I don't have issues if you want to get started.
Let's go. All right, good evening, members of the commission. Jeff Foster, Associate for the record. Tonight, the first I am bringing you is the zoning amendment for the Arrow Leaf project, LDC 20-11. Project site, about 1.96 acre size, It's 5 vacant parcels located on the west side of Harvard Way, about 550 feet north of the intersection with Vassar. If you don't know quite where that's at, you may know where the main U.S. Postal Service office is at, so it's not too far from there. Again, it is 5 vacant parcels. The request is a zone change from multifamily 30 unit per acre to general commercial in order to provide for consistent zoning over the property, which also includes 6 additional parcels that are the subject of a separate conditional use permit application, LC 5-20-12. The key issue that we look at for most zone changes is whether or not the proposed zoning is compatible with surrounding zoning as well as land uses. Regardless of land uses, to the north, we have auto repair business. To the east, we have a climbing gym, an undeveloped parcel also to the east. To the west, we have undeveloped parcels and a vacant single-family residence, and have apartments to the south. The zone is, again, multifamily 30, MF3, which does conform to the master plan. However, zone changes be requested to change the zoning general commercial, GC, and this is related to the 6 parcels surrounding the set parcels that are currently zoned GC. 4 of them are shown in the stars. There are 2 other essentially separate parcels that I couldn't star small enough, but they're there. The master plan is suburban mixed use SMU. Here are 3 goals and policies that support the requested zone change. Here are the allowed uses in the general commercial zone. The ones down here at the bottom in yellow require either a minor conditional use permit, which is an administrative review, or a conditional use permit with approval from the Planning Commission. Here are the development standards for both the current MF30 zoning and the proposed GC zone. The main differences are allowable height in the G zone as well as the allowable number of stories. Here are the recommended findings for the rest, and staff can make all recommended findings. Here's the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Do we get a presentation from the applicant?
The applicants, are you going to be making, you're not going to be making a presentation on the zone change, are you?
Just a quick statement, kind of what happened.
Fair enough.
Mike Niels with B5, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. In 1957, the property was subdivided. It was subdivided where, there's Woods Lane and I own it, a couple of streets in there, and there were a total of 10 parcels. And half of 5 of the parcels zoned over the course of the multifamily 30 MF30 and the other the GC. And what we're going to do is we're going to consolidate all those as one big parcel. The project that you'll see next is we're proposing on it. That's the purpose and the reason behind the change.
Understood. Thank you for the brief overview. We'll bring it back to the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Villanueva, please start.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with site.
Commissioner, same disclosure.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, same disclosure.
Commissioner Del Villar, same disclosure.
Commissioner Vito, do you have any disclosures?
Yes, Commissioner Velto, familiar with the site. I believe that is all.
Commissioner Armstrong, no disclosures. We'll now move to public comment. I have no request to speak forms. Is there anyone to speak over Zoom?
We do not have one in Zoom, no.
Do we have anyone in chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment for this item and bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Bissell.
Sure, thank you. Just a clear question, maybe Jeff, I'm sure. This is tied to next item, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so if approve this, then you discuss the next item separately?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep, based on their own merits, yes.
Okay. All right.
And remember that you're making a recommendation to the council to approve it. The Planning Commission doesn't have to approve the zoning amendment.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet.
All good.
Do you have any further questions from the commission? Hearing none, happy to move in discussion. Do any discussion or perhaps motion?
Commissioner Villanueva, motion to approve.
Commissioner Villar, I second.
I think we need to read the full recommended motion. All right, yeah. Commissioner Villanueva, would you please read the language on this screen just as a formality?
Sure. Commissioner Villanueva, motion for application LDC 250011, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that city approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance.
Thank you. A motion. And can we get one more second?
This is Commissioner Del Villar, I second the motion.
Wonderful. Thank you. A motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Good luck with your project. We will now close item 5.2. And before moving to item 5.3, I'd actually propose a 5-minute break. Everyone okay with that? All right. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay. Oh. Yeah. Do you think we're ready to do that? All right. Thanks, everybody. We're going to bring it back to the commission to open item 5.3, LDC 24-00012, Arrow Leaf Open's conditional use permit, and get a presentation from staff.
Foster, Associate Planner for the record, bringing you the conditional use permit for the related Arrowleaf Apartments project, DC 25-12. This project is a total of 0.17 acres, located again in the same vicinity as the zone change. However, it's located on both sides of Hard Way, again near the USPS post office. It is comprised of 11 parcels, 10 of which are vacant, 1 of which contains vacant single-family residence. And the request is conditional use permit to allow a 160-unit affordable multifamily development. The key issues staff looked at in the staff report are compatibility with surrounding uses and site design. Regarding the surrounding uses, you have commercial to the northwest and east, and you have apartments to the south on both sides of Harvard Way. The zone district is a combination of multifamily 30, MF30, and general commercial. And then, as we all know, it's related to LDC 25 that you just finished deliberating on. The master plan is suburban mixed use, and here are 5 policies that support the proposed change. In terms of some background, LDC 2511, as you just heard, being requested to provide for consistent zoning over the entire property, as well as allow the proposed density of roughly 32.5 units per acre. The application adheres to the general commercial zone standard and is contingent upon adoption of zoning map amendment. If the city council does not adopt the zone map amendment DC, the application will no longer be valid as the project does not meet current MF30 standards, and that is in condition 5. Continuing the background, we have 168 affordable or workforce apartments. The project proposes use of the income set aside that provides for rent and income restrictions between 40% area median income, or AMI, up 70% AMI, and applicant can certainly talk more about that. The applicant has indicated that the units will be dedicated for affordable housing for a period between 30 and 50 years, and that is in condition number 6. Length of affordability will be determined by the Nevada Housing Division, which will record a regulatory agreement against the property that will restrict occupancy in the project to low-income households. The agreement run with the land for the term of the affordable restrictions. Getting into 2 issues that staff analyzed. First is compatibility with surrounding uses. Mostly apartments and low-intensity commercial uses with standard operating hours surround the site. Proposed buildings are located significant distance from the apartments to the south. Staff is recommending the standard construction hours restriction and the condition number 7. And based on proximity of the proposed outdoor pool, the apartments to the south, condition 8 lists the allowed hours. Given all above, the proposed use is generally compatible with the existing land uses in the area. In terms of the site design, there are 4 apartment buildings, a clubhouse, and a maintenance building with a bike repair area. 2 of the apartment buildings are 3 stories, shown here. Each of those buildings contains 24 units and is about 29 tall. There are also 2 5-story buildings shown here. And those buildings contain 60 units and are about 14 feet tall. There's also a 4,400 square foot clubhouse shown here. Includes a leasing center, offices, club room, a fitness center, and a pet spa. There are exterior resident amenities, including a pool, a top lot, and 3 patio barbecue areas. And the project is required to have 168 park spaces. They are provided 231, of which 168 are in a carport code format, an example of which is shown here. There is also street parking available. There are 50 proposed parking spaces. All multifamily use specific standards, including air conditioner and washers and dryers in each unit, are included in the project design and will be demonstrated at building permit phase. And street-facing facades appear to meet the required wall articulation and ground floor transparency. Continuing with site design, the GC zone requires a minimum of 15% landscaping. The project includes approximately 27% landscaping, including 6-foot landscaped parking edges, which are important. The parking space is facing the apartments to the south on the west side of Harvard Way. However, to how close the proposed parking spaces are to existing apartments and the potential for headlights to shine into the windows of those apartments, staff recommends condition number 9, which would require installation of a screening fence or wall in the area shown there. Here are the recommended use permit findings, and staff can all recommended findings. And he recommended motion, and I'm available for questions. Oh, no, that's not true. I am available for questions, but this is not the full recommendation. We did send you a memo last week with an additional recommended condition number 10. That condition is to require a formal pedestrian crossing or crosswalk between both sides of the project to facilitate pedestrian safety. So this would be amended to, the motion would be amended to also include condition number 10.
Jeff, are we getting a presentation from the applicant on this piece of it? Looks like we are. Whenever ready.
I have a long presentation, but I don't think I need to go in. But Mike Dan with 1085 Group, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. It's been a pleasure to work with Jeff. He's been amazing. We just went through the project. No time, been great. So he did a great job explaining it. So maybe to cut things short, I'll just go through and be available to answer any questions. I do have one question on condition 6. And it has to do with how long the project is to be affordable. That all depends on the funding that we get. There's tax credits, bond funds, everything else. And so what we'd like to do is just change it to where the length of how long it is affordable will be depending on the type of funding that we get. If I don't get any funding, which, we're not hoping that doesn't happen, but then it wouldn't be an affordable project. We'd have to try to build it as a market project. But right now, things looking good on the credit side, the bond financing. We're working with the city, on a number of different, there's just a bunch of different, it takes it somewhere between 20 and 30 years, or 30 and 50 years. So that's the only condition change that we'd want to on that. The thing I want to let you know, although this is an affordable project, it's being built, we've built 40,000 with Pacific Whistlers also, units over years. And this is built just like our market rate project. They're roughly the same size, average within 50 square feet. They've got all the amenities. They've got all the exterior stucco, interior amenities. It's really a really nice project. So we hope we get approved and get to move forward. So any questions here? So I've also Bob Law's with me. He's the expert in the affordable in our side. So he'd be happy to answer any questions also. Thank you.
Great, thank you much. Bring it back to the commission for disclosure. Commissioner Villanueva.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Sarah, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Romeyer, site closure.
Commissioner Delvey, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Valto, same closure.
Commissioner Armstrong, same disclosure. We'll now move to public comment. I don't have any requested forms. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to speak this item?
Does not look like we have anyone with their hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive correspondence for this item that was forwarded to commission and entered into the record.
Great, thank you. Do we have anyone in the chambers wishing to speak under public comment for this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment for this item and bring it to the commission for questions. Do we have any questions from our commissioners in Zoom?
This is Commissioner Delvar. I have a question. I'm not sure who should answer, but it has to do with that condition 6, the affordability, and I kind of understand it from, the Reno standpoint about why condition is in there, and then maybe a little bit from applicant to understand why they don't want there. I was trying to put it all together.
Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. So the condition was put in the staff report based on the fact that the application was positioned as an affordable housing project. And during the staff review, I asked how long was this going to be an affordable housing project? Right. And the response came back a minimum between 30 and 50 years. And so staff thought that it was appropriate, since this was being positioned as an affordable housing project and marketed as such, if you will, right, that we condition it also as appropriate. I will point out that the applicant did not request any of the allowances that would be afforded to them under the code in terms of increased density or something like that for being an affordable project. So there's not a strict tie to being an affordable project. In other words, they did get X number of additional units or anything like that for being affordable. Yeah. So it just kind of comes back to, it was positioned as an affordable project. It was indicated that it would be affordable for a period between 30 and 50 years. And therefore, we want to make sure that that was kind of what you accepted as. Having said that, I've spoken with the applicant, and staff would be comfortable amending the condition to have kind of a caveat or language at the end, tying it to the amount of time that they end up getting the funding for. So if that's 12 or 15 years, or something along those lines, whatever period of time that they actually get the funding for, we would be fine with amending condition to tie back to that.
That would be So for example, like you're saying, if it's for 12 years, then it would be amended to 12 years. And then what happens from the standpoint of, does that contingent just go away and then continue rent, at higher rates, or that basically the step?
Yes, yeah, it's not into perpetuity. They can turn to market rate after the period of time they are allotted by the housing division.
And then it's probably a question for them, but if they get any, and I said, of course he wants it, but if they don't get any funds approved, then what's the implication for us approving this based on that? Does that go away, and they reposition it and get back to us?
I believe, and Mike might be able to speak to it, but I believe that we have ways to amend the condition. I don't know that it would need to come back to the planning commission. I think we might be able to amend the condition administratively if we're not able to obtain funding.
Correct. Mike Rayleigh for the record, planning manager. The other consideration is this project does meet the general commercial standards for a standard multifamily project.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was all I have now.
Thank you. Commissioner Alto, while we're on Zoom, did you have any questions?
Yeah, just to follow up on that question, is there any reason why, aside from, let me rephrase that, sorry, if condition number 6 were not in a condition for approval, would the city be able to make all of the other findings?
Yes, yeah, the rest of the project would stand, nothing else would change. You would be able to make the findings without that condition.
Okay, I really like requiring this to be affordable. I am super in support of that. I am very concerned that is not something we can do, and I don't know if that's, I can't really tell you why at this point, but it just seems like questionably legal and possibly overstepping our bounds. With that said, I would support it. I like the idea of being more affordable housing, but I kind of share the sentiment of the prior commissioner. Just that concerns me.
For the record, Mike Rayleigh, planning manager, I think it's important to state that that condition could go away entirely since they are not requesting any of the benefits, so to speak, of affordable housing incentives. This could stand on its merits, so you could forward removal of condition entirely.
I guess sorry to just real quickly, I don't want to remove it. Is legal okay with that condition being in place?
This has been made. I think since Mr. Foss clarified that we're not requesting any of the characteristics that might be granted for an affordable housing project, that this could be approved as it is without an affordable housing condition, and because I know they are in for state and federal funding would require at least a certain unit to be affordable. I think it'd be better to remove that condition altogether.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Not hearing any from Zoom crowd. Do we have any questions from the committee at this point? Do we want to be discussion? Commissioner Barrett, please.
Sure, I guess for applicant, it might be back to between you and Mr. Jeff.
For the record, Daniels.
Hey, Mike. How you doing? So, clarification, were you asking for entire removal, or was the change in language, so it wasn't as long, but just maybe a shorter period?
I think that we'd be fine if the timing corresponds to the funding. And believe me, our goal is for this project to be affordable. We've already, like your attorney just indicated, we're deep into application, and Bob can go deeper how much funding we have. But as long as it's tied to the amount of funding we do get, and if we don't get any funding, then it would go as an affordable project. It just doesn't get built.
Right. You mentioned that there are many of these projects are kind of, or this is not your rodeo with this type of project, correct?
We haven't done affordable since '95. We've built thousands, I think, close to 20,000 units over there since about '90, and but we haven't done affordable in a long time, and we're getting back into it.
Okay, great. I'm going with this is I'm really excited because I actually this was just general commercial, not affordable, in having a brief with staff as well. It's like, this is the bar. This is what affordable housing should be, right?
Yeah, it's a good project. The problem is you can't solidify all your funding, your affordable funding, until you basically have a permit right before you have a permit. So the plans has to be permit ready.
Kind of to jump what Commissioner was suggesting of keeping it,
would you be amenable to getting a modified version of that statement so it affords you flexibility if you didn't get funding, but it keeps it there to ensure it's affordable for X amount of years on funding?
Based on funding? Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be fine.
Okay, great. That's what I would be leaning toward too. And then it raises the bar for others, and it would be like the poster developer will for that development.
Commissioner Becerra, if I just make one comment for your curation. If they get the funding that comes through, there will be stipulations for them to get the tax credits that they'll have to record documenting that they're affordable. It might be somewhat of an issue that takes care of itself, so to speak, when that funding through. So I just want to clarify that.
Commissioner Villanueva?
I was just going to say something similar. I mean, if it's going to be affordable, get the funding, and yeah, there's not going to be issues there. And if they don't funding, then they either build or they don't build, but it's not tied to incentives. So I just don't see any value in keeping it.
Yeah, agreed. Do you have any discussion? Are there questions still out there?
Happy to make a motion.
Okay, or a motion. Commissioner Velto.
Matter of, sorry, let me make sure it's the right one. Okay, there we go. In the matter of case number LDC 2500012, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, except that condition number 6 shall be removed.
Go ahead, Jeff. There was one more addition to add, right?
And about condition 10, the addition that we emailed?
My apologies, with additional condition number 10.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Good luck with the project. Now close item 5.3 and move to item 5.4, LDC 4-00010 Security Circle Yard Zoning Map Amendment. And looks like we have a presentation from staff whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Daniel Martoma, Associate Planner Specialist for the record. Before you is another request for recommendation to the City Council for a zoning amendment. And so the subsite is approximately 2.2 acres that occupies 2 parcels located at the northeast corner of Virginia Street Security Circle. Current zoning designation of the subject site is mixed-use suburban, which does not conform with the site's master plan land use designation. And so the proposed zoning change to mixed employment would bring the 2 parcels into conformance with the master plan. And so key issues with this request were analyzed were compatibility of the proposed zoning to the surrounding zoning districts, as well as conformity with the master plan. And this slide illustrates the current zoning of the subsite and surrounding properties. And please note the shared mixed suburban zoning of adjacent properties on the east side of Virginia Street, as well as the residential zoning or the residentially zoned properties on the west side of Virginia Street. And so through the adoption of the reimagined Reno master plan, the subject site as well as adjacent property on the east side of Virginia Street were assigned the mixed employment master plan land use designation. So just make that distinction, mixed employment master plan land use designation, as well as the proposed zoning of mixed employment. And so as a result, there have been some land use inconsistencies on a local scale between the city zoning map and the city master plan. So this proposed zoning to mixed employment will, in substantial conformance with master plan and these highlighted master plan goals and policies. And so here's a comparison table of the use types allowed in both mixed employment zone district, highlighted in green here, as well as the mixed use suburban zoning district, highlighted in gold. And so with the exception of residential use types, the use types allowed between both zoning districts are actually quite similar with some minor distinctions. And so And then here's a table listing the development standards of both zoning districts. And it's important to note that per Title 18 of Reno Municipal Code, a site plan review would require for non-residential developments adjacent to or within 150 feet of residentially zoned property. As mentioned, this subject site would qualify due to existing residential zone properties to the west. I can point that out again. So here to the west. And so with that, any site plan review would review residential adjacency standards to mitigate any potential issues related to noise, lighting, site signage, setbacks, building orientation, et cetera. And present, the applicant has applied for and requested a site plan review for the strict site. And important to note that the approval of that site plan review is contingent upon City Council's approval of the zoning map amendment request. And these are the recommended findings for approval of zoning map amendment, and city staff has made all findings. And of course, this is the recommended motion, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thanks so much for your presentation. Back to the commission. Oh, sorry, before I do that, do we have a presentation from the applicant or is it just staff?
Well, the applicant here has to answer questions, but I don't believe there's any formal presentation.
Understood. In that case, we will bring it back to the commission for disclosures. Commissioner Nueva.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Becerra, no disclosure.
Commissioner Romero, no disclosures.
Commissioner DR, I am familiar with site. That's it.
Commissioner Vella, no disclosures.
Commissioner Armstrong, no disclosures. We'll now move to public comment. I have no request to speak. I have request to speak form. Does anyone on Zoom wish to speak on this item?
No one on Zoom, and we have not received any respondents for the item.
Understood. Anyone in the chambers wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it to the committee for questions. Do we have questions? Commissioner Becerra?
Sure. Daniel, really clarifying here. Great job. This is really just so to bring this area up to concurrence, is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's denied it, we go in against conformity, right?
Essentially, yes.
Great. All right, thanks.
Do we have any further questions from the commission? Hearing none, we can go into discussion or a motion. Do we have any discussion? Any willing or ready to make a motion?
In the case of LDC 25-0010, based on compliance with applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zone map amendment by ordinance.
This is Commissioner DR, I second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Good luck, project. We'll now close item 5.4 and open item 5.5, text T 23-00005, Title 18 zoning cleanup. And it looks like we'll get a presentation from Angela.
Just before we begin, did you guys want to take a quick break to be a long agenda? Anyone need a 5 minute?
We just took 5 minute
Perfect.
break, so I think we'll rally. Yeah, thank you though.
Yeah, after this one, because we have another with you after the correct?
You do. Are you here for this item? Yes. Okay, so it sounds like we do have some public comment. Did you want public comment to go first, or do you want me to go ahead and get off?
Yeah, actually, normally we do the other, but yeah, let's just open public comment for this item. If anyone in the chambers wishing to speak on this item, looks like we got at least one. Can you just file a request to speak form? Oh, you're prepared. Go ahead, sir. Thank you. Whenever you're John McGinnis?
Yes. Chair Armstrong and members of the commission. My name is John Menace, and I'm Vice President of Sales of the Reno Sports Convention and Visitor Authority, or the RCA. On behalf of our President and CEO, Mike Legata, who is unable to be here tonight, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak briefly on the topic, which we believe is vital to the economic health of the city of Reno and Northern Nevada. At the RCVA, our job is to entice visitors to come to Reno, Sparks, North Lake Tahoe area to enjoy the outdoors, the special events, the great entertainment offerings they all know and love. Ultimately, it's our job to support the local community economy by getting those visitors to stay overnight at transient lodging establishment in Washoe County. The RCA is a sales and marketing organization driving visitation to the destination, and in those efforts, we are branded as Reno Tahoe. Tourism is a $5.2 billion industry in Washoe County. According to our research partner, Tourism Economics, Tourism generated more than $440 million in state and local taxes in 2023 and supported more than 40,000 jobs. While the diversification of our economy has been key to recent growth, we believe tourism is still the driving force of the regional economy. This is the area that thrives on events. As locals, we look forward to experiencing the nostalgia of 5,000 classic vehicles taking over our city and rolling through downtown. We're excited for theatrical performances and concerts at Wingfield Park, and we know it's time to enjoy a chicken wing or Italian food festival right here in downtown. Our research shows that visitors also enjoy the amenities. More than ever, travelers, especially the new generation of travelers, want to immerse themselves in local culture and celebrations that are authentic to destination. At the RCA, we are planning around that. We have $1 million budgeted to support events, new and existing special events, and also to go out and find events that may want to relocate to Northern Nevada. We do this because we know events support visitation. Visitation supports business big and small throughout Washington County and right here in downtown Reno. These are tax-paying businesses. These are established businesses. These are businesses that rely on visitation, and these businesses that rely on visitors having a reason to come downtown, play in downtown, and to stay overnight in downtown. Some of the larger casino resorts in this area are also heavily invested in improving downtown. In 2015, they supported a self-imposed nightly room surcharge to help fund improvements of public city buildings around downtown. Part of the reason was to continue bringing the region's largest convention town. Since 1995, the United States Bowling Congress, USBC, has brought more than 1 million bowlers to the National Bowling Stadium, accounting for over $1 billion in economic impact for Reno and the surrounding areas, and that's just USBC. We know this is a lot of information, and I want to end by saying that on behalf of the RCV, we appreciate the difficult work you do as a planning commission. I want to ask the commission to please consider the impact of events in the downtown area, how it affects visitation, how it creates room nights for larger businesses, and how it creates new customers for small businesses in the area, and how all these tax-paying businesses and their employees benefit from gaming, entertainment, and visitation in downtown Reno.
Great.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone else in the chambers or to do public comment on this item? See none, and before I go, do we have anyone on Zoom that wanted to speak to this item?
We do have Tyler Colton on Zoom. Tyler, when you're ready, please, looks you're unmuted. Please state your name for the record. 3 minutes.
Hi, Tyler Colton. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I've spoken to a couple of you about this, and I'm going to lay on what Patrick Coleman spoke about. So with Title 18, there was the live entertainment update happened in January of 2021. It was a blanket that put an 11 o'clock curfew on live entertainment, and then after that, you get a conditional use permit. I think that the intent was like a little overreaching, and I don't think the intent was to be that. So there are some areas that seems don't need a conditional use permit. There are businesses that are already existing have been forced to get a conditional use permit. So the language in Title 18 currently is a little over the place. It feels like for the live entertainment portion need updated. I think what we'd like to see is some type of zones, rated entertainment zones, so that would kind of really define which businesses would need a cabaret license with the additional conditional use permit, and which businesses and areas would not to apply for that. So an example, they're in Midtown, and I was told that my cabaret license allowed me to operate without conditional use permit with the hour that I applied for. To be grandfathered into those hours. But a new establishment on Virginia Street opening, and we're told they will not need a conditional use permit and that they're 24 hours. There's another bar that's existing on 4th Street in the Brewery District that has been there for 10 plus years. They last year were forced by code to get conditional use permit, yet they had already been 24 hours. So there's a lot of discrepancies between what areas, who, between planning, business, and code of who needs to get this. So kind of asking that you take that up within Title 18, that you create these entertainment zones or update the code so that it's much more clear that each areas or entertainment zones, people really understand what they will need as an existing business or an opening a business. And I want to thank you all as well. Watching you guys over all these months now, what a difficult job. So much comes over desk. So I applaud you in really paying attention. And I do the best for the city, and I know it's important. Thank you, and hopefully you'll take this to council.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone on Zoom wishing to speak?
We do not have anyone on Zoom, no.
Okay, we will go ahead and close public comment and get back to staff for the presentation.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Anna Foos, Assistant Director with Development Services. I think bringing up, there we go. So this is a long time coming. This is finally a text amendment. It's an ordinance now. This is the final document, the final red line. We've been working on this for several years. We started this process right after we adopted our zoning code back in 2021. The previous zoning code was a major overhaul. It went through probably 2 years worth of time and meetings and a consultant to help us rewrite the zoning code. And so the product of that is what we have adopted today. Now, over the last couple of years, we've been keeping track of what things don't make sense, areas that conflict with another, things that from an outside perspective, people have said, I don't even know what this means. And our staff's, yeah, I don't know what that means. So we list and we're cleaning it up. Also have a number of things that are just basic. For instance, we used to call our department community development. So there are probably 50 words, 50 times in the zoning code where references community development. We're no longer called that, now called development services. That's a basic cleanup. See it a lot out the code. Another basic one is site plan review. We have two kinds of plan reviews. We have a regular plan review, and we have a major site plan review. Well, people are confused. Well, what's a major versus a regular? So we said, let's clean that up. Let's just add the word minor. So we have a minor site plan review and a major site plan review. Again, just a cleanup. It doesn't change how it's reviewed or what findings are, but throughout the code, it's probably written in 100 times for site plan review. Now it says minor site plan review. Just simple things that help make it easier if you're trying to review this code and understand it. There's a lot of areas that, again, were very inconsistent. So fencing, for example, we had a whole section of fencing. And then in other sections of our code, they had unique sections on fencing. So you may have a whole chapter about fencing, and then you go to industrial requirements, and there's additional requirements for fencing. And then you have our parks requirement. No, there's additional requirements for parks. So that became confusing because people inherently think, oh, if I want about fencing, I would go to the chapter titled fencing. You wouldn't think, oh, let me find some weird section of that also talks about fencing. So we called inconsistencies clips, just making it easier for the average person as well as our staff to try and make sense of this very big document. And then, of course, anytime we have changes with the legislative session, they have rules and regulations and laws that come out, then we need to change as part of our code. So we have been working on this for quite some time. We've held many meetings, had many discussions with the general public. We started the process by first going out to NABs, that was a year and a half ago. We just gave them a high level, here's some things you guys to be involved in. We put all of the NABs on an email stakeholder list. So anytime we sent out email, the NAB members were involved so they could continue to watch what was happening and share that with their community. And then we held a technical advisory committee. This was about, I think, 30 to 35 people, planners, engineers, landscape architects, public works, people at staff, outside of staff. So it was a good group of people that we had to review the changes. We did that over the course of seven different meetings. And then we went to some of these small groups, like the Historic Resource Commission. We have a whole chapter dedicated to historic resources. And so we went to them, make sure that they were in support of the changes. We went back twice, make sure they were comfortable. A lot of smaller meetings. We met with the landscape community, we met with the school district, we met with anyone really that had questions, any smaller group had questions. And then we held bigger, I would say more public stakeholder meetings. This was for anyone that wanted to be involved. I don't care if you live in Reno, own property in Reno, lived in Carson City, but were just interested in Reno. Really, anyone that was interested was invited to these meetings. Some of them were virtual and some of them were in person. Very few people showed up in person. I will say that the virtual ones were better attended, but not great attended. And part of it was a very technical document. The average person has never read a zoning code, probably never will. So I think they were just looking for high-level information. We did a planning commission times. We broke into 3 meetings, help it make it more digestible as we went through a lot of the details. We counsel their input based on some of the feedback from the planning commission. And then we went back to the NAS this last October, really just to kind of full circle and just make sure that we tried to get that final input with the neighborhood. So big things that we will highlight, what's not part of this current zone code cleanup that we're doing separately. ADUs. This group has talked a lot about ADUs. We are moving forward. Council has initiated that. We'll be doing our stakeholder outreach starting in January. So that will be coming for Planning Commission. Short-term rentals, we're not sure when that's going to go forward. We're waiting for council to initiate that, but there's nothing in this zoning code tied to short-term rentals. Change to the noise ordinance. We had quite a few residents in the downtown area approach us about creating a noise ordinance. At this point, we've been working with our city management team, and we are going to go separate direction from the code cleanup. So an item on our next council agenda talk about noise. And then we had included some smaller things related to tree protection. After a meeting with Council Dewar and our management team, it was decided to pull all of those items out so that at a separate time, we could do a separate text amendment really specific to tree protection and do a deeper dive and make some, I'd say, bigger broader changes. So we, anything out that we had initially purposed. Signs, same thing. Initially, with this code cleanup, we had a couple small changes, but we took all that out. So no more any change to signs as part of the process. We have a separate process that we've done all of the sign changes with. That went to Planning Commission just feedback. Already, we are going to City Council just for feedback next month. And of course, that will be back before you as a formal ordinance for your review. We also have a separate text amendment tied to telecommunications, which is cell towers, that will also be before you guys at a future time. So high level, I want to talk about some bigger themed changes. There's a lot of changes that we can go through the red lines, but from a general perspective, I want to just kind of give you big picture some of the changes that are coming out of this code cleanup. So number one is related to regulating number of stories. All of our different zoning districts regulate how tall a building can be and also how many stories a building can be. So for instance, if you're in, let's say, a general commercial zoning district, say you can go up 65 feet and maybe they cap 5 stories. We said, well, it's kind of conflicting. You have two different sets of rules. So we said at the end of the day, we don't know that we care so much how many stories you have, but we do care about how tall that building is. So we removed all requirements related to number of stories and kept the building height. And this does fall more aligned with kind of practices. If you look at any other zoning code, we couldn't find other zoning codes that actually look at number of stories. They all look at building height. So this is really getting us more aligned with best practice. We have another kind of really old archaic section of our zoning code tied to setbacks. And in some of our multifamily and in our mixed use, we have two different setbacks for setbacks. One of them is 0 feet. And if you're trying to promote infill, you want to encourage more of the ability to build more up than out. So that 0 foot infill or 0 foot setback allows you to build on the property line. Then we had a second set of standards that said, or greater than 5 feet, greater than 10 feet. And so we had development coming forward saying, well, I want to build at the 3 feet property line. So I meet the requirement because the setback's 5 or 0 feet. Like, well, actually, there's two standards. And some of our staff say, no, it can build 0 or up to 5. Other staff said, no, it's 0 or greater than 5. So again, conflict perspective, even our own staff had different opinions on how that worked. We went back and looked at other codes. Does anyone else do this? No, nobody else does this. So I think that was one of those old archaic things that's been in code for decades and probably had something more to do with building requirements. Building code has certain regulations if you're building a 0 stack line. But again, build code and fire code regulate that. We don't need the zone code to regulate that. It's already being regulated somewhere else. So we took that out. Anywhere that we allow a 0 setback, we maintained that. Anywhere that we have 3 or 4 diversions, we said take it out, just have one set of setbacks. Other things related to infill, we had some sections of our code that required develop with an alley, have access off the alley. And in theory, it's good. From an infill perspective, you want the ability to have access off an alley if that's where your primary access is, or maybe the street on the other side. But what we found is it was actually kind of impeding development where I really don't want to design my site, so I have to have access from the alley. I wanted this cool little infill project, and it doesn't work. And the other issue is that the city doesn't maintain alleys. We don't have funding to maintain alleys, so this has become more apparent. You drive down alleys and see that they're full of potholes and the city not maintaining them. So if we're encouraging people to use alleys, but we're not maintaining them, we kind of have a conflict. And we said, whoa, we probably didn't regulate this as mandatory in our zoning code. We definitely encourage people to use alleys, but we're not mandating that you have primary access off an alley. Really to parking, we looked at allowing more compact parking, that basically parking that's more narrow and shorter. Not everybody drives a big truck in Nevada. A lot of people do, but we do have a lot of people that have more small compact cars, and so we want to be, again, a little bit more to speed on what the norm is. So we are now allowing more compact parking within a lot of our commercial shopping centers. And on-street parking, anytime you have parking requirements, we have requirements of how many spaces are required on your site. And then we just say how many can be required on street. As long as that parking is literally in front of your parcel, well, that street parking, you can't use your neighbor's front of their parcel, but we added more allowance for that on-street parking.
Chair?
Go ahead, let's go ahead. It'd be
You
easier
wanna-
while it's in your mind.
Oh, great. The slide before with the alleyways, can you touch on that a little bit? What do you mean the requirement for alley access? I'm not familiar.
So like take Wells Avenue area in general, there's a lot of existing alleys, and we have requirements that if you're coming with a new development, let's say you're gonna build a duplex, and let's say you have the front of your house is a street, let's pick a street in Wells Avenue area, and the back of your property is an alley. So we have some requirements that if that is the case in your new development, we want you to have garage access on the alley, not on the primary street. So your average street, anytime you live in a normal single-family neighborhood, right, you see a garage, you see a front door from the street. And so with requirements that if you have alleys, your garage access has to be from the alley. Again, we felt that at one time it was more of like, oh, it makes it look like a better neighborhood because you're not looking at a garage door from your street. So in theory, that was kind of a nice thing. But in practicality, a lot of infill developers are saying, well, you're forcing me to put my garage back, and that doesn't work my type of development. Maybe I'm doing 4 units or 5 units, and I need garage access from the front for some units and garage access from the alley for other units. So we got more complaints than we did positive feedback on this requirement. So we said, we support all use of alleys, front streets. You don't want to hinder infill, just giving more flexibility. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, with supporting infill, kind of opposite of that is how do then we protect existing neighborhoods? Well, the idea of infill is great. Our master plan supports it. We get a lot of complaints from neighbors that live in areas infill is happening and they feel that their neighborhood is changing because of this infill development. So we also wanted to be cognizant of that and try and do something to protect existing neighborhoods. So one of them, we looked at some of the commercial uses, things like car washes, things like Jiffy Lubes. You have oftentimes mixed in with neighborhoods and wanted to make sure that neighbors were being protected. A lot of these car washes are 24-hour use. You can get your car washed when your neighbors are sleeping, but you're there washing your car and vacuuming your car. We put in some standards that say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Again, for these car washes, great, we support them, but we have to have some protections to mitigate the noise and the bright lights, everything that is that negative impact. So we added some extra standards related to car washes. Anything loading dock. Let's say you're Target and you have a loading dock in the back, and maybe next to your Target facility is multifamily. So again, now you have multifamily next to a shopping center. That shopping center has loading docks. There's trucks coming in probably 20 hours a day, dropping off and picking up. So those are the kind of things that we're trying to protect when we look at existing residential neighborhoods and some of these commercial or non-residential uses. And they have some conflicting requirements. So we have a lot of requirements that we call more residential adjacency bursts. That's things like lighting, additional screening, additional landscaping, additional fencing. And so some sections of our code say these additional standards apply if you're within 150 feet of residential zoning, and other sections of our code say 300 feet. And so, again, depending on what section of that you're looking at, you get conflicting regulations. So we took a more conservative approach and we said anyone within 300 feet, not 150 feet, new development coming next to residentially zoned property have these additional offers. So again, to protect those existing neighborhoods. The other thing that came feedback from the council is related to home parks. A lot of our mobile home parks are not zoned residential. They're often in commercial zoning districts, so they would not trigger these residential adjacency protection because it's based on what zoning is. So council asked to add some language that protects existing mobile homes and any new developments in. And then the big ones too is related to our setbacks and step backs. So anytime you have existing residential development, and again, it has to be zoned residential, you have a new development coming in. Let's say you have a 1-story house and next door is a vacant lot. Somebody wants to come with a 3-story apartment. We have a requirement with that new building, that new 3-story building, if it's over 24 feet, any part of it that's over 24 feet height has to step back a foot for every foot of development over 1 foot. This is something that had already been in our code, but then we had so many different conflicting regulations on this setback regulation. We said, let's just get clean. Let's make sure that everyone understands what it is, and I'll have some great examples of what I'm talking about. But this is something that, again, protects those existing residents. We don't get a ton of, I would say, high-level multifamily development next to single-family homes. We typically get, 2 stories, 3 stories, maybe 4 stories, moving into 1, 2-story development. So from a big picture perspective, I think this will help the smaller infill projects. Big garden-style apartments, we typically probably don't need them in residential development. So I think on these smaller projects, it will be helpful. Things we're doing to protect neighborhoods, we look at our screening requirements. That's the table on the right. Our current screening requirements are based on your zoning, not based on your use. So you kind of look at what's my existing zoning, my use coming in, and let's say you had a mixed use zoning. You could be apartments, you could be single family, you could be industrial, you could be commercial. So, well, wait a minute, we probably should base screening how we're protecting 2 different uses based on a use, not based on a zoning. So we cleaned it up to better protect uses rather than zoning. We also looked at lighting. We get a lot of complaints about lighting from these big industrial projects and commercial projects. So anything within 100 feet of residential, your limited height of 18 feet for your, and so that a light both in a parking lot and a light on a wall. And you think, well, 18 feet, where did that come from? If you think about a 2-story house is generally probably 24 feet. So a lot of people have a light on the second story of their house. So again, it's not something that's majorly crazy and out there to say you're going to capped at 8 feet. We also looked at how tall a lot of semi-trucks are. Generally, they're about 13 feet, so this allows flexibility for semi-trucks to go through a parking lot with 18 feet tall pole light. And then we also look at, within our industrial zone, because having so many conflicts with warehouses, conflicting when they're next door to residential, we now added a requirement that if you are in the industrial zone, you want to do a warehouse, if you're with 300 feet, residential zone, and you want to opt 24 hours a day, you're no longer allowed to do it by right. Today, you do it by right. You can go to a building permit. Now, what we're proposing is that you would have to go through a conditional use permit, so that, again, the neighbors could weigh in, have input, and look at it on a case-by-case basis, and make sure the protections are in place to help buffer those existing residents from that warehouse use.
That include mobiles?
Yes. Okay, and more specifically on industrial development, we have some sections of the code where they're just kind of goofy. We have a rule that says if you're zoned industrial commercial and the square footage of your building is more than 500,000 square feet, we require that you have multiple tenants. Now, that means that, let's say you have a big Amazon that goes in and they're more than 500,000 square feet. Those big building closer to 1 million square feet. This section of our code requires that they had multiple tenants, and from a zoning perspective, I'm not sure why we care if it's multiple tenants or one tenant. That seemed to be of an overreach. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that the site itself is designed to mitigate the impacts, right? Lights, traffic, parking for the employees. So let's take that requirement that we no longer care if you're one tenant or multiple tenants, but anything over that 500,000 square foot still will go through a public review process. From a use perspective, the build itself is a use, so a conditional use permit, really with the appropriate entitlement. It would be more of a site plan review, but we want to keep it at planning commission, so now it triggers a major site plan review. So everything still comes before planning commission. Again, the things now that we're looking at it for anything over 100,000 square feet, and we don't care if it's one tenant or multiple tenants. Other things with industrial development, we looked at where we currently allow that indoor manufacturing, processing, assembly. For the most part, that's typically like a big warehouse. And so we looked at where it's allowed now by right, and we modified it within our mixed use suburban, so our mixed use zoning is permitted by right. Now we have it go through entitlement, so we can just look at from a case-by-case perspective. Similar to the warehouse distribution, we looked at where we allow it by right and said, any chance where there could be resident nearby, but the zoning is so open to so many different uses, we don't really catch it. So now we're going to require more an entitlement through process. And data centers is a use that we currently do not have in the zoning code. We are starting to see data centers. We have one coming for planning commission in the very near future. That will be our first one, so that's exciting. But we just to establish as a use, so we look at what are the parking requirements. We are requiring a conditional use permit for all data centers, just because, again, they're new and they're unique. They have impacts, and so we want to make sure that we can address them depending on where they're at.
They qualify as if they were to come forward today?
For the most part, we took a look at more of an indoor manufacturing or warehouse type use. Because I haven't had any come in yet, it's all just talk. The ones we have had conversations with said, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing. You know, have employees coming to work for you? Do you have trucks coming? So now we've defined what we would consider a data center. We're also limiting, if you're building a new data center, limiting how many dock doors you can have. So that you may tell us you're a data center, but you put out a bunch of truck dock doors, you're not really a data center if that's what you're doing. So we have some limitations now on making sure that they fit that definition of data center.
And that would be in an industrial zone, I assume?
So anywhere we allow our industrial zones, also in our commercial. We also allow mixed use, and again, with a conditional use permit.
They don't exist yet, so.
We don't have any yet.
We don't have any data center yet, but the use doesn't exist yet either.
Correct. So what we have done in the past, we have written what we call an administrative interpretation. Anytime there's a use that doesn't exist, we have to create a use. So when people call us and say, hey, I wanted a data center, we have to give them a set of standards. So we wrote an administrative interpretation, now we're putting it in code.
Oh, so there's one that exists already,
We have none built in Reno. We have none that have applied to be built in Reno, except for one that has now applied for a conditional use permit, but it hasn't before us yet.
I understand that, but does the interpretation exist? Has an interpretation been established?
Yes.
Does that interpretation, you probably don't know off the top of your head. I'm curious, so industrial, I don't know if so general commercial, you know, what the interpretation indicates for that zone currently. And I know it's only interpretation, I know we don't have any yet, and it's all kind of hypothetical.
Yep.
But what is it?
That we would allow data centers in the general commercial zone, but with conditional use permit.
The conditional use permit, okay.
Yeah. Right, and then again, for industrial development, we really amped up our seating requirements for anything with dock door. Here's an example of These industrial buildings have dock doors. Imagine if you live sort of that, and there's trucks coming in and out 24 hours a day. So we have additional screening requirements for all uses, not just warehouses, all uses that have loading docks. And we also have a process if you want to do something different so that it can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. The hard part we use big warehouses is that most of the time the land's not flat and square. Most of the time there's some unique to it. There's some topography. We don't know where the residential is. So it's easy to write code if everything was flat and square and equal. But for the most part, most of the vacant land that's left in Reno is challenging to develop. So we want to provide flexibility so that you can go through a public review process if needed, if you need to modify those standards. And then also allowed warehousing in public facilities. And we thought, well, why? Like, public facility is not intended for warehouse. It's intended for schools, libraries, and stations. So that, in our mind, really didn't make sense. And I don't even know that I think of a public facility zoning that has a warehouse. So we're taking any entitlement away. It was just more a catch that we thought, oh, well, probably doesn't make sense. Also, a lot of time we have this big warehouse distribution. A lot of them have outdoor storage. Sometimes that outdoor storage just gets unsightly. They're either storing the stuff up or not maintaining it. So we really beef up our outdoor storage requirements, more with the landscaping around it and fence requirements, more of screening outdoor storage.
Can I ask on outdoor storage?
Yeah.
Is there clarification around the outdoor storage of vehicles versus other materials?
So it depends on how we're using it. For instance, if a car dealership, it would fall under their use of car dealership. I'm trying to give an example. We have outdoor storage where people have parking lots, but that would be different as more of, a parking lot associated with business. RV storage also falls under a category, not outdoor storage. It's more mini storage.
Because we did have one case here that was the landscape vehicle parking, which was considered outdoor storage.
Okay.
And there was no clarification that that would be more like a parking lot versus an outdoor storage space.
Can you think what that one was?
It was a landscape business that had an outdoor yard area that they were storing equipment and vehicles in. So it would be outdoor storage, essentially ancillary to the primary use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that I have a clear answer on that. We might have to look on a case-by-case basis. Because you have a separate category for landscape maintenance repairs business.
And that case, I recall, was there. It might have been the outdoor storage. Their office was off-site, so in case it would just fall under general outdoor storage.
We also, this is funny, so we have a category of primary use, outdoor storage. We have another group of categories where accessory use is outdoor storage. So different requirements depending on how it's classified. We overanalyzed so many things in this code. All right, commercial uses, big things. We talked this with Plan Mission, tattoo parlors. Do we want them as a separate category, or do we want to lump them in with general personal service? And so we took your feedback, took it to council. They agreed we should lump it in with general personal service, allow general personal service in a lot more areas. That is things like hair salon, getting nails done, laundromat. So tattoo parlor now lumped in general personal service. Car washes, we have expanded now to allow car washes in our neighborhood commercial zoning, but with additional use permit. And our concern is to make sure if you're next to residential that we're mitigating those impacts. And then drive-throughs. We have really kind of changed the way we look at drive-throughs. Prior to COVID, we were anti-drive-through as a city. Part of that was we were trying to encourage people to walk and bike, not rely on their cars. And then COVID hit, and we obviously needed drive-throughs. Many businesses survived because of drive-throughs. People probably survived because of drive-throughs where they may have otherwise caught in COVID. So I think over time we've looked at drive-throughs a little differently. We are very limited in our zone code on where we allow drive-throughs, especially in our corridors. So we've expanded now to allowing them in more areas, but with a conditional use permit. One we don't want, for instance, is like a Dutch Bros going in, In-N-Out Burger, super intense drive-through without having the ability to look at them and the impacts. So we've beat up now where we allow them, but still with public review process. Schools. We had quite a few discussions, both planning commission and at the council level, on how we to address schools. Number one is we went back and we looked at Sparks and Washoe County. We're all three jurisdictions supposed to have generally the same regulation schools. That makes sense because the school district is only one school district for this whole region, and yet we have three jurisdictions. It sure would help them if we all had this set of rules. So we went back and we cleaned that up. And then we combined a category. We had defined primary schools, meaning kindergarten through 8th grade, and secondary schools, which is high school. And so, again, it didn't match what County and Sparks are doing. It kind of created conflicts. So now we just lump schools. We're not looking so much at primary or secondary, just schools in general. And then we've added additional requirement so that anytime a school is in, whether it's public school, private school, charter school, we have language that says, here's some key things that we want to look at across the board all schools. And it's things that we're dealing with all these new schools, right? It's the car doing the drop and pickup, where are people waiting, where are the flashers, where are the crosswalks. So all of that is now, first and foremost, hey, if you're doing a school, know that we're going to ask for these things. Now, one additional thing that came out of council that had not before you guys is council does want us to see that schools that have more than a certain number of kids will have to go to conditional use permit. The way zoning code is now is that most schools in general, we don't have the school capacity, they trigger a minor conditional use permit. So that never comes before planning commission, does not go through public hearing. Staff reviews it, we do public notice cards so the public can comment, but there's no formal meeting of this. They don't have to go to the NAB. So city council direction, they've asked to put a threshold, and anything over that threshold would have to go to a conditional use permit. So anything, new school coming in, more than 400 kids, which for the most part is all of our Washoe County schools, they trigger a conditional use permit. A lot of smaller schools, like the charter schools, some of them are over 400, some of them are not. And so the smaller ones, especially ones associated like churches, they would not trigger a conditional use permit. They would still trigger a minor conditional use permit. So that still does require that we review it, we condition it, and we do send postcards out. Anything more than 100 school students moving forward would trigger a public review process.
Angela?
Yeah.
Sorry. I did say that I know the Senate with the other municipalities recently, Sparks County, they're applauding Reno for this in particular as of recent. There's a conversation there at the regional, and so y'all trailblazers on this front. Was 400 just like taken as an average? Curious how y'all arrived at the particular number.
We looked at traffic and we said, what would trigger a traffic study? And traffic is different for elementary, middle, and high school. So we did the number of students that would trigger it, and it was somewhere between 350 and 450, depending on, again, what school type you're talking about. So we kind of met in the middle and said 400.
Oh, okay. Because at regional, that's been the $64,000 question of the threshold. So,
Yes,
so it's
we've
good
had
to-
lots of discussions with regional.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We're on the same page. Not sure all the governing board members are, may change that number.
Right.
For what triggers a project regional significance.
Is Washoe County School Districts waived fees for special use permits, or is it now going to be?
No, so right now, all of the schools right now trigger a minor conditional use permit. So they are going through that process. They also have been great, at least in the past, probably 8 months or so, they volunteer to go NAB. That hasn't always been the case. They're not required to. At a conditional use permit, they're not required to go NAB. But again, I think they're in support of definitely reaching to the community. So we've had quite a few discussions with them. I think some of their bigger concerns are not so much the new schools, but through their modernization plan, their existing schools that they are upgrading. A lot of their schools, they're keeping but extending. And so we had a lot of discussions from their perspective, what would trigger a conditions permit for these schools expanding.
And what's the answer to that?
So that is non-related to this, our
Okay.
standard code. If you expand by more than 20% to 20,000 square feet, it would trigger additional use permit.
Okay.
Yep.
Like Bond Middle School, for instance, redoing it, are they expanding?
And that was a complete tear down, rebuild of a three-story school. So they are through that process. They went through a minor conditional use permit, so it did not require a public hearing. And we've gotten a lot of pushback from neighbors. And I think part of it is we haven't felt like, yeah, I've always lived next to school, I knew about that, but it's a three-story school. So when you live next door to a three-story school and you're used to a one-story school, I think like maybe I want to be involved in this, and maybe I didn't get a public notice postcard or I didn't see a sign posted. So again, I think this process could help to aid some of the community when we start these big changes. Yeah. Sustainable development. This is one that several members of our council have asked us to do what we can from a zip code perspective, make things more sustainable. There's not a whole lot we can do, I'll say from a zoning perspective, but we tried to pick a couple of things here. One of them is from a big perspective, within our landscape requirement, we had a couple different zone districts where we did require trees or landscaping. Public facility, for instance, we did have a landscape requirement. Silly. So we think that was just an oversight. So we've added public facility, now require 2% site landscaping. And then with our new screening standards, and that was that table where we talked about, used to be based on what your zoning district was, and now it's on what your use is. So two use next to each other, we require screening. We've increased the tree spacing. So it used to be every 30 feet, you have to plant a tree. We talked to the lands community and we said, can we reduce that to allow for more trees? And that the discussion was, yes, you can definitely do that, but you have to make sure that you're planting them far apart enough where they can still grow. So instead of every 30 feet planting a tree, we kind of settled on 20 feet. So again, we'll be able to more trees, and for a tree you plant, you have to have 6 shrubs. So generally, we're going to get more landscaping through those screen standards. Another one inadvertently, our code update went in 2021. We took a requirement that said you have to pave your parking lot. Can you imagine? It'd be like the Wild West, just a dirt parking lot. And so it was an oops, that was an oversight. So putting that information back in the code, yes, you must pave your parking lot. No, we don't gravel parking lots where. And a big one we've been working on with Tumwa and Health Department is anytime you have irrigation right next to a street and it sprays onto the street or the wind's blowing and the water goes onto the street, it really degrades the street way faster than it needs to. It's a waste of water. So we have a requirement now that no irrigation, like spray irrigation, within 18 inches of a public right-of-way. Yep, you can have drip irrigation, but we don't want to see that spray within 8 inches of the public right-of-way. We have been, like I said, we coordinate with Tumwa and definitely in support, excited to see that. Other things that we're doing within our requirements for a traffic impact analysis. So typically when you go, oh, I submit a traffic report, it's going to show how much cars are coming and what the impacts are. Now we're asking for additional information on multimodal. So that's everything from how are people biking to the site and how are people safely walking to the site. So we've expanded it to look at not cars when we do a traffic report, but now also to look at that whole multimodal perspective. And then the last one has to do with solar. We've had a lot of interest, I think, from many of this group and other groups. Why don't we do more to require solar or incentivize solar? We weren't able to get a good space in requiring solar. I think there's too much pushback from the community. And so we all wanted to say, well, what do we do to be more proactive and incentivize? So we looked at other codes. And again, there's not much that we're finding. It's really helpful from a zoning perspective. But we've seen some jurisdictions that allow for reduced parking in exchange for solar. And whether that's solar panel or full-on solar parking structures. And from the reality perspective, one of the pushbacks we get from a solar parking structure is it makes it tough to meet your parking requirements because you have big columns, as you see even in that picture. The columns kind of help, they break up where you can fit cars. And so we thought, even better, let's reduce the parking. We reduced it by 5%, so it's not a huge parking reduction. But our hope is we can get more businesses to want to do solar parking, and that means you can do parking requirements.
And is this for commercial or is it residential or across the board?
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
And 5% on residential isn't much. I mean, I'm hoping that we would see it in the multifamily where you have more parking requirements. You wouldn't see it on a duplex or single family, but definitely in where you see bigger parking lots, we're hopefully trying to incentivize it.
And it doesn't have to be like this, it could be rooftop or whatever.
Yep.
Were any considerations for moving that CUP on warehousing in exchange for solar?
Internally, we talked about. Our concern was that didn't address Councilwoman Ebe's concerns. Because she's in Ward 4, where we're seeing a ton of industrial development, while it helps to have solar, it doesn't address the issues of 24-hour use and lights and traffic, which is what she's getting a lot of complaints about. Okay, wildlife protection. So this is something we were working with the horse advocate group, and they helped us to come up with language and really over the top on this, just cleaning it up. We now define where that Virginia range is, and that matches where the Department of Wildlife defines the Wildlife Virginia range, just again to make our code consistent with Department of Wildlife. And then we looked at how we can better the fencing. One of the complaints we got from the Wild Horse Advocate group is that a lot of times horses will get out of the fenced areas. And it's very tough when you catch the horse, tough to get back in. A lot of times, horses sneak out, and we don't know how they get out. So you go back to the gate where you think they come out, and the gate's locked. So we have a new requirement that you have to put in kind of these, I'd call them more like emergency gates. They're not in your typical place where you think the gate was, or spread out. There's dimensions, 10 feet wide. And again, our intent is for these wild horses that get out, don't know how they get out, then wild horse advocate groups will be able to get them safely in. We also have requirements now that you have flagging on any kind of wire fencing, flagging so that both horses and the humans can see where the wire fencing, because a lot of times it's hard to see. So a lot of small things like that. Again, this came directly from the Wild Horse Group. We did come up with that on ourselves. It's really something unique, and you have to know what you're doing. And so those Wild Horse advocates were super helpful at coming up with language.
Question on that one. We've had the horse advocate and just this topic before for at least since I'm here, year and a half. With these changes, do you feel like we will see less of those concerns, or maybe no more concerns that we've seen in the last year and a half, or is this a good step in the direction?
I think this is a small step towards the horse issue.
Oh, okay.
I think there's other things that zoning perspective we can't be a part of. There's concerns about as development keeps happening, we're cutting off water just natural water sources to a lot of the sources. Again, from a zoning perspective, not addressing that. So I think they're going to continue those types of decisions.
Okay.
So bigger picture, council has also asked that we put together a wildlife mitigation plan specifically for horses. So I think that will likely be happening. I don't know if that will be tied to our zoning code or a separate mitigation plan. So we'll be working with the same to see what we come up with on that.
Great, thank you.
Oh, and then I wanted to give you guys a couple examples of some of the crazy things in code that like I said, some of these things have been in for decades. And as staff, we're like, why does it say that? So these are some things that I just want you to understand why there's so many changes. The zoning administrator perspective, we like to clean these things up. So just as an example, we have a section in our code that talks about you're doing a public park. And it says, okay, so if you're, so you're building a new public park and you're in any zone district except for the PGOS, which is that Parks, Greenways, and Open Space. Okay, great, makes sense. It says, your lights have to be shielded. Got it, that's the standard anyway. You have to screen in parking or courts if you're adjacent residential zone. Great, we have that kind of screen standard anyway. And then it says if you have lights in your parking lot greater than 3 feet in height, you trigger a site review. I mean, I can't even think of a parking lot with lights that are 3 feet. I can't think of any parking lot I've ever seen with lights that are 3 feet in height. So this to me is just like stupid. Why don't we just say all lights will trigger site plan review? But then again, like this parking lot, why just having a parking lot with lights trigger site plan review? That whole concept to me just seemed crazy and a big waste of time and really a hidden Easter egg because again, who actually reads line C and says, oh, okay, I trigger site plan review because I'm putting lights taller than 3 feet in my parking lot. So we deleted IC because that just didn't make sense. Another one, so this is to do with setbacks. You're looking at our single-family zoning setbacks on how your front house has to be, your property line, your side, and your rear. So this one is specific to your rear setback, so how your house has to be from your back property line. So the rear yard for each parcel may be 10 feet. If one side of the yard is at least 20 feet wide and contains a minimum of 400 square feet of a maximum slope of 7:1, basically a land. So we read that like, okay, so my rear setback can be 10 feet, but only if my yard or neighbor's yard has sides of 20 feet wide, but only if it's 400 square feet of space, but only if it's sloped with a maximum of 7:1. I don't even know what 7:1 looks like. That seems pretty steep, but I don't know. The point is, like, this is really hard to administer. I don't know what the intent was here, so we cleaned up. One more. Okay, so now we're on our side setback requirement. So within the rear setback and the large of the front setback, or 15 feet from any property line. So just that sentence itself, I don't know what that means. My rear setback and the large of my front setback, or 15 feet from my property line, any portion of my building that exceeds 12 feet in height has to have an additional 1 foot of side yard for every, foot over 12 feet height. So again, we looked at that and we're like, I got nothing. Am I changing my side setback or rear setback or front setback? What does it impact? So this is the kind of language that we just go in circles trying to figure out what does that mean. Do we interpret that? So we said, let's take that kind of stuff out. None of us understand. We get the intent is probably to have that step back, but the way it's written, I got nothing. Doesn't make any sense.
Was the language entirely removed, or was it just finessed? So it's kind of more in layman's terms.
It was deleted. It was buried, and yeah.
All right. Okay.
Now, we didn't make completely go in the fact that we still have that side setback. We call it that step back.
Mm-hmm.
So any portion of your building taller than 4 feet, meaning more than 2 stories, you have to step back anything above that.
So you're just falling back on other clear language or tape somewhere else.
Yeah.
This is all noise and confusing.
Very confusing. Okay, so again, big news since we talked to you back in February and March when we met with you and kind of went through all changes. Again, just as a reminder, we did remove anything related to protection because we've given direction to pull out and do that separately. Any tied to signs pulled out, we're doing a separate sign text amendment. We had as a group talked about excess parking. I think you had brought one up. We had initially proposed we had a requirement that you provide more parking than our code allows. We can penalize you by making you add extra landscaping. So we're keeping that. And the way it's worded is that if you have more than 150% of the required parking, so again, a lot of math there because you have to figure out how many parking spaces are required, more than 150% of that, you have to provide additional landscaping. And it's based on 10 square feet of landscaping, every parking space, above and on that 150%. So this really impacts your bigger parking lots. You typically wouldn't sit on a small parking lot, but let's say you have a shopping center and a ton of parking. This would require now that they have more landscape. So we kept that linked in because we just really don't get a lot of big parking lots these days. But if we have another big shopping mall, this is where it would come into play.
Well, and I guess if there is concern with that with the solar now included, maybe there's a way to tie that in somehow. So you're not. I never thought as though the adding of the trees was penalizing, but this could be a way. I guess if you really need that, and they can add the solar and not have to do additional, but something to think about.
And definitely too, I think one of our biggest urban island challenge areas is the airport, right? Because it's a bunch of just flat concrete. And so this is a great example. If we have these big parking lots, it does help to have trees and landscaping. So from that perspective, I think it definitely helps bring down that heat effect, just again, make a better green community. So not necessarily a bad thing. I think I probably made it sound like it was a bad thing, but it's not a bad thing, but we'd keep that. Okay, and I just have one change from the red line went out. Initially, we removed everything in this 2 A, B, C, D, and it's related to gaming. So there's some language that says basically when you have a gaming establishment come in, and this is for things restricted gaming, so this is with 16 or fewer slot machines, we have some requirements. You have to have two businesses into each other. Maybe you have, I don't know, a grocery store with slot machine, next door you have a bar with slot machines. So this regulation identifies, well, they have to be separated by a solid wall, and you guys can't share bathroom and kitchens. And so from a zoning perspective, we're like, well, why zoning regulate that? That should be something gaming control board regulate. But we had some comment from the gaming community and said, whoa, this is actually a good thing. They do down in southern Nevada, and we were just unaware this is actually a worthwhile thing to have. So staff had initially recommended that we take this out. We are now recommending that we leave it in, not proposing to make any changes to the wording, to leave it in as it is written today. That is the only change that I have from the red line version that's in front of you, but I wanted to open it up to any other questions you guys have. This is technically the opportunity for Planning Commission to make recommendations to council that are formal recommendations. You can choose to approve, deny, or modify anything, and we'll take the city council for a first reading.
Great. Well, thanks as always. We appreciate all of your presentations and all hard work that's gone into this. I'm glad we actually get to formally make a motion on this tonight. Does the commission have any questions or comments for Angela before we move into discussion motion?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Velden.
Just to address some of the concerns that was raised by during public comment. Tyler asked about the cabaret license. I know this has come up a lot, and also understand very far along this process. Is that something that's going to be addressed or can be addressed by council?
So I will add some background to this. Back in 2021, we were just coming out of COVID, and we had a lot of bars that were coming back with DJ Trivia. That really was like the start of it all. And we considered DJ Trivia to be live entertainment. And our zoning code did not allow live entertainment at places that were zoned like a Bowley's or, one of these neighborhood commercial bars. And so DJ Trivia was like, man, you got to do something to allow me to do DJ Trivia. And so we said, it's a good point. Like, we should look at live entertainment as a bigger picture. So we did a complete zone code update specific to live entertainment. And now we allow live entertainment everywhere. Every single zoning district allows it. We have rules. So you can have live entertainment inside up until 11 p.m. So if you want to have DJ Trivia at your bar or at your restaurant, you can do that now by right. No entitlement, straight to just do it. You do have to get a business license and everything, a cab license to do any kind of live entertainment. From a zoning perspective, though, we said as long as you're doing it indoors up until 11 o'clock, you can do it right. For any business after 11 that wants live entertainment, we're going to require a conditions permit. Now, that did go to planning commission, did go to council. We had a lot of discussions with council about the downtown area in particular. And we said, should this be relevant to downtown, right, where we have 24-hour towns and so 24-hour businesses? And the answer is yes, wanted live entertainment to have to go to a conditional use permit. It does not limit your ability to have a bar or a restaurant or any other business 24 hours a day. So this specific 2 hours of the live entertainment component. And I think that's one that maybe a lot of businesses are not understanding. If you can do a 24-hour business, great. We're not limiting that. But if you want live entertainment anywhere in the city, after 11 o'clock at night, it's a conditional use permit. Any business that's been operating, have a cabaret license, let's say they've been in operation for 20 years, no, we're not coming after you, right? As long as we prove that we have some kind of documentation said you doing live entertainment. And so we go back and look at the history when we gave you a business license, If we have any in our notes from the last however long you've been in business that says, yep, we've approved for live entertainment, then you are grandfathered in. We're not going to take that right away from you. It's just like, our zoning code does all the time. We make you close your business. Now your use is not allowed in that zoning district. It's no different. If you can show you were approved through the city for live entertainment, maintain that forever. So any new business that comes in has to follow today's rules. And that's across the board, doesn't matter if it's live entertainment or anything else. Any new business follow today's rules. So you're a bar, you want to operate 20 hours a day in downtown, you can do that. We allow that. If you want to add live entertainment, singing, dancing, karaoke, musicians, that live entertainment, anything past 11 o'clock requires a conditional use permit.
I have a question about that, just to clarify, for my edification. The individual that spoke earlier, I think he was concerned there was obviously different entities had different entitlement. In the example you gave, there was a period of time where there was no live entertainment. What possible during the era where someone came forward and received an entitlement to have live entertainment past 11? Okay, so is it possible that some of these examples that were shared for public comment, some of businesses maybe during that early era received an entitlement for maybe to go till 1 a.m.?
Yes.
So there may, and I don't know the specific was talking about exactly, but is it possible that maybe some confusion is resulting from higher entitlement, even in an era before live entertainment? Okay, thank you.
And so what we have done is we now have a spreadsheet that is, we started out with just downtown area, and we pulled up every entitlement that we've done that's related to live entertainment, so we can better track it, our code enforcement team. And then we said, well, let's also beyond that, for instance, Second Street, it's a karaoke bar, been in place for probably 25 years. So they've been doing live entertainment for many, many years. They don't have a conditional permit, but they've been there with the same operator, same license for a long time. So we went back and we found notes from 2017 said we approved them for live entertainment. And so we said, okay, we honor that. Had some conditions to that. And again, it wasn't clean by any chance because it's written a note of a business license. It's not a conditional permit, but we are honoring all those agreements. So we're pulling all the licenses that we have in town and bringing the research, to figure out, did we ever approve it that that business could have live entertainment? That would be tied to that business owner, where a conditional use permit is tied to land. So that's the difference too. So Tyler, who was just on the phone, so he's had a bar. It's the Emerson, and he owned it for quite some time. He didn't have to go through a conditional use permit because found notes in the system. Then we gave him his license. We give him the right to have live entertainment, say till 1 o'clock. So he's grandfathered in that as long as he has that license, he followed those rules. If he ever leaves and a new bar comes in, that new bar, if they want to do live entertainment, they would trigger going through a conditional use permit. So we're trying to kind of catch up on the history of what we did over the last 2 years. It's a lot of research. But again, we haven't been consistent because our rule changed so much over the years. But our hope is that every time we get a phone call from a bar owner, they say, hey, what do you have on me? Do I have a conditions permit? What was I do for 5 years ago? I opened it, I don't remember. So from this perspective, we're not proposing changes to live entertainment. All of that was done through that separate text amendment. At this point, council has not given us direction to make any changes. I think part of it on our end, we just need to educate the business community on it, what they are entitled to or what right they have.
Great follow-up. I do. Applaud you and Lauren and your team for this work. I know it might seem like years and years, but to remind us.
5 years, like 3.
Is it 3, give or take? Okay, because that does tee me up with the question. It's a broader, more strategic question of management for this type of document.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you probably go through another years every time you might want to make a needed adjustment in a chapter or a section. Is there a plan to allow or empower staff to make minor changes, in a transparent and so forth, akin to what we do with minor site reviews, right? Administrative, you're like, this no longer makes sense. Let's change this, and we'll bubble it up planning commission and FYI, this change was made. And for larger changes, we'll maybe go through our formal process, like a major site plan review, akin to that, right? Is there going to be something like that, or okay?
There's not. We do have added some language, a Scrivener's error, so if we catch that maybe there's a reference that was wrong or something that was inadvertently left out, we can make that change.
Okay.
But truly any change needs to go through that process.
Right. And not trying to skirt, just trying to find a way where we can streamline processes without compromising the public review process. So then my next question would be, what trigger another review? Is it just a matter of someone years from now, Harry saying, let's go through that again? Or is it arbitrary, or is there something specific that triggers this reprocess?
Council has to initiate a change to our zone code. So if we have, like, for instance, they've initiated us to update our sign code, to create an AD ordinance, to update our telecommunications ordinance. So there are a handful of things that are in process now that they've already given direction to update. And I think the reality is we know there's always going to be need for change. So we'll keep making a list, and we'll probably come back and ask council, like, hey, we've got a long list of things you would initiate or change. But there's always going to be one-offs. And that's what we found in this code is it's so old and it's just been ramped over and over again. The thing that we find, oh my gosh, that was crazy that they wrote that 20 years ago and we're still dealing with it. So we'll continue to clean it up. Ultimately, I would love to have a consultant to lead it and start her, but I don't know that that's in the plans anytime soon.
Okay, so the last question there. Do you feel like staff in the city are in a better position now with the changes that were 3 years ago for moving forward and ahead of us? Or are there areas that you felt we could discuss tonight that you'd like to back and forth?
No, I think, again, from the changes that are proposed, these aren't major changes. And so this, from our mind, is kind of clean, easy fix because they're things we said, the examples I showed of, does anyone understand what that means? If we can get rid of those things, it makes our lives easier. It also makes the people that actually review it, the architects and the engineers and the planners, if they don't know what it means, they're just frustrated as we are. And the general public too. I mean, the general public trying to read a zone code, it's so confusing. So, the more we can do just to make it easier for all of us, the better. So this is a good first step.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. Lauren, I'm ready to sort of motion or whatever this body wants to do.
Sure thing. Don't have any additional
Question,
Commissioner
but it's
Villanueva?
not to this. I'm good at this. I just had a question about something that was said earlier, so we can either approve this and then ask my question after.
Might as well just ask the question now before we vote.
Okay. With regard to the data centers, you mentioned that that it would likely when you guys go, I know it's La Raza right now, you guys don't have a blank slate and there's really nothing in place. The general commercial, it only looked at the master plan and only one, there's only one land use under the master plan where it would, that would be suburban mixed use. It's not, there's no general commercial under industrial or mixed employment.
Are you at the master plan? or zoning
Master
code?
plan, yeah.
Yeah, so from a master plan perspective, we don't dictate uses, we dictate zoning districts.
Okay, but yeah, exactly. But I guess my question is, why would we do a general commercial that doesn't fit on master plan industrial work?
Yeah, let me pull up where we are posing what zone districts. Hold on just a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this MDID was our mixed-use downtown innovation district, which are we allow a lot of industrial types.
You're looking at development code?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, can I do it there? Let's put this one.
And did you say MDI?
Yes. So at MDI, it's kind of an old part of downtown, more like in the street area, where it allows a lot of industrial type uses. So we looked at what is the data center comparable to, and again, more of whether it's a warehouse or whether it's more inside processing, and so we align our uses with that. So we got the MDI, which is that, again, where the innovation district, and we have our mixed use, and most of our mixed use is our corridors, such as 4th Street or Virginia Street. MS, we have a lot of MS in like the valleys, for instance. General commercial, we allow a lot of industrial type uses within that general commercial zoning, and then we have 4 different employment or industrial type uses. We're also looking at
All of those that you just named, I don't see any of them fit under industrial or mixed employment. It's all going to be under the master plan, that is, under urban mixed use or one of others. And I guess it's because you guys don't envision that that's an industrial type.
So we're looking master plan?
Yeah, so you're looking at development code.
Yes.
But the development code has to align, right? Am I understanding with the master plan? The master plan highlights a variety, I'm looking at it right now, highlights forming districts.
Zone districts.
Exactly, which is development code, districts, master plan, districts under certain. So we look at industrial and we look at mixed employment. I see industrial, I see industrial commercial, I see mixed airport, mixed employment, parks, ways, and open space, public facilities, and on and on. I don't see any of those that you just described. And I guess my question is that because the city staff or whomever, not sure, the powers that be, don't envision data centers as industrial?
They're different than industrial in that they are the same level of noise. A lot of times with industrial uses, we have people outside hammering, making noise. They also generally will generate less traffic in a lot of these big houses. So from that perspective, you may see, we've had interest in some of these smaller data centers that would go into even like a core, not a downtown, but in your core kind of inner city area. Other cities is where we're going. So they're functioning a lot of times more like an office. So from that perspective, we need to look at case by case, but where we would see them typically, that mixed use, MU zoning, MS zoning, commercial zoning, that is where we allow a lot of the warehousing, big office complexes, more of those types of uses. So
Okay, I guess that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm envisioning current data centers that exist. I'm not going to need names because I don't want to go there. But in my mind, those are more industrial. You're looking at lights. You're looking at large buildings. It's basically a giant building. So this is for the future. Just wanted to kind of get some insight into what that was potentially going to look like, because I think it's important, because I don't know exactly kind of what that would look like, because I think we have different visions what a data center is. I don't know if I'd want a data center in my backyard, or I don't mind a dental office in my backyard, or a law firm or whatever. Thank you. I appreciate the answer and kind of all that you've done here.
I think you'll probably get a good explanation in that the data center that's coming for Planning Commission here shortly, they can give a better example of what theirs would look like. Because we first talked about data centers as staff. We also envision the same one that you're envisioning, more of a prison type looking facility with bright lights and secure fencing. But again, in talking to a handful of different ones, the ones they're building don't resemble that in what. We want to look at case by case, because we don't want, if we are getting what we're envisioning, then we're going to condition it differently and maybe deny it based on the location. But if it truly does look more like an office complex, and there's not much traffic because there's not many employees, no industrial traffic, then it really is a pretty low intensive use.
Great, appreciate it. Do you think these data centers might have their own conditions? I mean, some findings specific to data centers, because the amount of energy they're drawing, amount of station structure, some of these other ancillary.
We thought about too, the challenge we have is from a zoning perspective. It's not necessarily our lane. They can't go places unless they have, whether it's water or energy from, a substation. So from a zoning perspective, we control that. And they pretty much tell us, this is where I want to go and here's why. And we look at it and say, okay, what are the impacts, right? It's noise, it's traffic, it's lights. So how do we address that from a zone perspective? So those are the things that we looked at. And we'll see it as they come in. The good thing is we condition them case by case. So if you find things, each one really has the same issue and over, as we up the code over time, we make it as just standard requirement rather than a conditional use permit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that one.
Do you have additional questions?
I don't.
You do not? Okay. Our commissioners on Zoom, do you have any additional questions before I bring back?
No, thank you.
Sure thing. Hearing none, entertain a motion.
Oh, can someone back up? Sorry. I make motion to approve. Let's see. Based on compliance with the applicable findings, I recommend that City Council approve text amendment by ordinance to edit section 1803-405-82 as discussed.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for your hard work. So before open item 6, I'm going to just float the idea of maybe continuing to the next meeting. Is that possible? Just because it's getting late.
It is, yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to, do we have a busy agenda?
We do have a fairly full agenda for our next meeting. I think we were 5 items for next.
About the 8th?
We could.
I don't know that we have a quorum for the 18th.
We do.
We do.
That was remind us, we do a quorum for all of our upcoming meetings, so.
Actually, I have to back out of the 4th. Would that upset our quorum?
Actually, the 5th.
5th? Yeah, not going to be able to make one.
I think we're still good. I will reconfirm with Michelle.
We can look at the agenda and bump it to if you're meeting for your December meeting based on how long the agenda is.
How long is the training? If it's 15 minutes, probably.
I could do it if it's 15.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay, let's do it.
Some quick pin jacks.
So I will now open item 6, training the importance of land use planning.
Okay, so we kind of wanted to go back to a couple things of what is the role of staff versus planning commission versus city council. And this great little cartoon, which I thought was so perfect. Planning commissions are policy advisors, Council are the ones that actually make the policy. And then staff has to administer the policy. So we all have very different roles in this. That's the fun part about working as planning commissioners. You guys give us your input, you make recommendation, approve and deny projects. When it comes to big policy decisions, council's the one that gets to make those decisions. At the end of the day, staff just follows the rules that are adopted. So generally speaking, whether you're dealing with an entitlement or a business, we all follow the exact same process for everything we do. We get calls all day long about, hey, I open a business here. First question is always, well, what's your property zoned? Here's my zoning. Well, is that use allowed? Yes or no? Okay, great. So we know use is allowed. And then we get into detail in terms of, have you designed your project to meet all the rules? And we have so many different codes and regulations, just high level, the ones that you guys probably see more than not is zoning code, obviously. The building code perspective, we want to make structurally it's sound, and we have all kinds of regulation on that. Fire code. Fire plays a huge role in review of what the building is structured to look like, how this is designed, make sure fire truck can get around it. And then our public works design manual, which is really more the engineering side of things. They're designing roads, they're designing drainage ways, and all level of detail. Every project, whether it comes to you guys of review or goes to a building permit, follows that same general process. We get questions about, well, how come the master plan says this? How do you guys implement that? Or how about regional plans? Here's just a couple other big policy documents that I wanted to kind of highlight, because these are things that we think about as we're reviewing projects. And all of these documents are big picture policy. They don't say you shall do this. They say generally you should do this, right? We should encourage infill. That doesn't mean we look at anything outside of infill and deny it. No. Like again, from a policy perspective, things that we're trying to make the city better about. Same with sustainability. We don't have a lot of musts or shalls when it comes to sustainability, but we have things that we're constantly trying to do better. So again, it kind of ties into, well, we don't require that people put up solar panels. What can we do to encourage it? So all those big picture, big policy things really weigh in when looking at really development as a whole. Now, when you guys review something, you have a whole different set of things that you have to look at, and it all goes back to findings. Every one of your entitlements has a separate set of findings. And generally speaking, they all kind of are the same thing, right? Is it compatible? Does it follow the development standards? Meaning, if the setback is 10, is it meeting 10? If the building height is 30 feet, is it meeting that? When it comes to public services and facilities, that is everything from, does it have access to sewer lines and water lines? Does the police have the ability to serve it? Does the City of Reno Fire Department have the ability to serve it? And just because a fire truck is not within 8 minutes or 6 minutes doesn't mean that we don't build these things. You know, our policy documents dictate we're trying to make sure that we can get, for instance, when you call 911, trying to get a fire truck there with 6 minutes. But if we can't get a fire truck within 6 minutes, it's really on the city to build more fire stations. We just don't have any money. But we have things in place that say, hey, if we can't serve you within 6 minutes, we're going to require that you put in fire sprinklers. So that goes back to, here's how to kind of mitigate impacts. And then that final one, is it detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare? That's probably our best one that we deal with, is how do you find that, right? Seems like something that's not black and white. So with each of our staff reports, it's same template. So it starts out with the background, and then we go to the analysis. And each of these kind of side points is really what goes back to the findings that we just looked at, whether it's a conditional use permit or a major site plan review or a major deviation. Generally, the findings fit and match each of these categories. So is it compatible with surrounding uses? And we have questions about, why are you allowing industrial development next to residential development? Well, the zoning allows it. And there's things that we have to do to, again, address, mitigate impacts and make it safe for that neighborhood. So just because we not like the idea of industrial next to residential, our code allows it. So from that perspective, we have to look at it and say, okay, we want to go against code. It's allowed. How do we allow that development to happen in a way that's not going to negatively impact the surrounding neighborhood? And each of our staff reports follows the same template, so you always kind of tie these things back to the findings. In terms of traffic, access, and circulation, every new development will trigger new traffic. That is given. So the question is, have they mitigated their impacts? And so new development come in and say, you know what, I think you're causing too much traffic. We go to traffic report and it says, here's your level of service. Policy perspective, our master plan says, we're trying to maintain a policy level of service of E. If F is failing, we are just under that with E, but that is our master plan policy that we have to try and implement when we look at these traffic reports. Utilities and service, same thing, right? Have they shown how they're going to provide sewer lines and they're going to build a water line? It's not our job to build it, it's their job to design it, we review it, and then they spend the money to actually do it. All our staff reports all go back to master plan performance, where we list what policies we're in conformance with. The good and bad thing about master plan, it's a very broad document, so you could probably find policies support most projects and find policies to go against all projects. But policy document, so we outline the ones that are support or don't support when we're making our staff recommendation. And then we also do a section on public and stakeholder engagement, and that's just more informational of here's when it was the NAB, here's generally the kind of feedback we're getting. One thing that from a planning commission perspective, you guys are tasked with looking at the opinions of the committee, from the applicant, and trying to weigh in the pros and cons. So keep in mind too, a lot of times maybe one voice is heard at these meetings, where there may be a whole community of people that maybe don't agree with that one voice. And so we always have to be cognizant of, just because somebody is the loudest in the room doesn't mean that they are the right person in the room. We all have to be cognizant of one that maybe can't be as vocal. We had a young child come today and talk about, cats or a cat were behind the building. I thought, what a great community, activist to get out there and kind of talk about what she was concerned about. So whether you're a loud voice or a not loud voice, we really try and take into consideration everybody's opinion. But the big two is at the end of the day, we are responsible for tying back to findings. And so because 50 people come out and they don't like it, we can't just deny projects because people don't like it. It really goes back to the rights of a developer, the rights of a property owner. And we can find a reason why it is not in conformance, then it's a reason to deny it. But just to say, you know what, a lot of neighbors don't want it, we're going to recommend no. They're the kind of denials that get us into trouble. You always have to try and find a reason to get to a finding, not just based on emotion. From a public perspective, we do enough, to get information out there. We do, I would say, go above and beyond probably what most other jurisdictions do. We send out, as an application comes in, we send out courtesy notice postcard. So if you live within 750 feet of your own property, you get a postcard that says, here's a link if you want to check out the information, here's what's being proposed, here's when it's scheduled for planning commission, the NAB, so the general public, it can call the planner and ask questions, and we have the NAB. So we at the City of Reno have neighborhood advisory boards. Sparks has nothing. They have no type of advisory board. Show has Citizen Advisory Board, or CABs. They do not review development projects. Our NABs do look at development projects. They vote to approve or deny, but they provide input. So again, Reno has one extra step that a lot of their jurisdictions don't have because they have that NAB. And then we send out public notice and postcards, post it in the RGA. That's more of a requirement from state law. Yellow sign is unique to Reno. Most jurisdictions don't require those big public notice signs. Benefit there, maybe you don't live nearby, but it's an area that you work by, and so you wouldn't get a postcard. So these signs are helpful for people that are walking by, driving by to say, oh, something's going on, I'm going to read about it. Again, what can we do to get the information out? And of course, anytime we write a staff report, any feedback we've heard, this is staff's opportunity to try and address the concerns. And I think, his case early night on the 7th Street, so there was a ton of comment in the public early on. A lot of changes were made to the site, and staff pushed back on a handful of things, and the applicant pushed back on a handful of things. So we kind of met in the middle, tried to come up with something that maybe they didn't love, maybe we wouldn't love, but at the end of the day, we were okay with, right? We were comfortable proving something that met our code requirements. And so a lot of times there is give and take from the development community of, why don't you just let me do what I want? It meets code. And we, well, it may meet code, but here's all the concerns, and they're legitimate concerns. How do we work with you? So we try to do that as best we can, understanding that we can't make everybody happy. And again, we have to be able to say it to, is this something that if we add this condition and the applicant's not willing to accept it, or they come back after the fact and sue us and say that came out of nowhere, that arbitrary and capricious. So we have to keep that as staff in the back of our mind. And luckily, we have great lawyers who tell us don't do that, and help us to kind of keep it on these things before we make too many mistakes. Did you have a question, Annie?
I did, Angela. It was the first bullet, see notice postcards. I remember folks in the public saying if renters could be included in that, because I think the notice we're only going to
property
owners, and so not always notify. Is that something that this is willing to do or can do? Or
because it has a financial hit, now we're paying to do more, that would have to be city council.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and then at the end of the day, everything to go to planning commission if it requires public review, and that gives you guys the opportunity to also listen to the public and add or modify those conditions of approval. So when we are looking at comments or feedback from the public, you may be asking, I know many you and I had talked about this in some emails, how does staff factor in all the different input? And our first and most is there something we can do to redesign the site in a way that addresses their concerns? And if it's a question of, I'm proposing 5 stories and the guy next door wants it to be 2 stories, that's a pretty significant change, probably not realistic if the zone code allows it to be 5 stories. But if they, hey, Mr. Developer, are you willing to maybe plant some trees to help screen the neighbor? Are you willing to push back the second story of that building so where a guy's bathroom is, he doesn't have your bedroom looking in his bath window? So try and work through those things with the developer as best as we can. Also use that ability to add conditions of approval. We don't have that ability on building permits. We can't just randomly add things. But if it's entitlement and it's through this review process, we can add additional things. So I think that's the other people don't understand. If it's a project that goes straight to a building permit, it's black and white. It either meets code or doesn't. We don't get to say, I kind of feel like you should add 10 trees because I feel like. We can't do that at a building permit. So when it comes to a public hearing or anything that requires us to write a staff report with conditions of approval, it enables us to add additional things to mitigate those impacts. And then again, we have to make sure that whatever the conditions of approval are, is really a logical link between what they're proposing and the impact. And I want an example. When we approved big planned unit developments, you've got 5,000 homes, you've got 2 schools, you've got neighborhood commercial, a big development's being approved. Oftentimes we'll say, we also want you to build a fire station, or we want you to, put in a library. Not really. Things that we in the past have conditioned, and the applicant, we work them to do these things. So and when you go back to the condition that we're imposing, is it equally, kind of fairly being imposed? Or is a project with 100 units coming in and we're requiring them to build a fire station? Like that would be very inevitable, right? 100 new units, you also have to build a fire station at a cost of $15 million. That would not go over. If we got sued, we would lose in a beat. But when we have these big developments and we have a proportional kind of nexus between what they're doing, what that developer's doing, and the impacts on the city, we have a lot more flexibility to say, hey, are you willing to set aside 200 units as affordable? Are you willing to have us finance a fire station? But unless it's a big project, we all have to be very careful about what we condition. We've had a couple of projects where council has added condition to pay an affordable housing fee. We as staff cannot add that requirement. We can't just randomly say, you got to pay a fee and you got to pay a fee. That would be illegal. Same with planning commission. You guys don't get to say, you pay a fee and you pay a fee. Not okay. So council, they can do that. If the applicant agrees to it, then it's okay. If they're being forced to do it, then we get in trouble. So again, anytime we're dealing with a product and you think, man, they're adding a bunch of traffic, why don't we make them fix the spaghetti bowl because they're adding all this traffic? No, it's not proportional. We can't do that. So we do a lot of that fine balance and dance between, is this going to get us into trouble? We require that they do this or build this. But for the most part, our team is pretty good about kind of knowing what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. But that's something, when you guys are adding conditions, just be aware there's things that, unless they're truly like a proportionate nexus, cautious about adding conditions where you're randomly making somebody pay for something or build something that's outside of really how much development they're proposing.
Question on that. Sometimes we remove conditions, right? Like we did that. Yeah, but it came for us. We didn't suggest to add it. At some point, staff and maybe the applicant agreed to bring it before us, but then changed course by the time it was presented to us. I guess what I'm asking is that we also be cognizant of the situations where we remove conditions which maybe we shouldn't have.
Yeah, anytime a staff adds a condition, there's probably a reason, and they can be the reason why a condition was added. But again, if it was just a straight building permit, none of those conditions would have been added. So at the end of the day, if you remove all the conditions, it probably, could have gone building permit without any of those. And I don't know that there's any major ramifications by you remove conditions. It could impact the development in terms of, well, maybe neighbors want it and you took it out, but it's typically not something that's going to have a huge impact.
I guess maybe what I'm asking too is sometimes we are concerned about being sued by the developer. Should we be concerned about being sued by our fellow residents for removing conditions? Not the one tonight, just randomly.
Good. And we get sued all the time. Reno is always a lawsuit. One that I don't think if you guys reviewed it, the Life Church project. This is one over by Damani School. Did that come before planning commission or was that?
Before my time.
It may have been a staff review. So staff reviewed a project, wrote conditions of approval. It was just maybe a conditional use permit. And it was a church down by Damai School was expanding the school. They have an existing school that was part of the church and they were expanding to more square footage and more students. So the neighbors came out and appealed it and to city council. And the neighbors' concerns, one of them was that traffic's already loud and they wanted either the city or church to put in a rubberized road near them because that would quiet the streets. And they all suggested maybe a sound wall, kind of retaining wall, or backyard. And again, it goes back to any of those things that are really linked to Life Church, or are these just existing problems that you're dealing with, and you think that these things will be exacerbated. So to approve the project, there was litigation back against the city and the church. We get sued all the time on all decisions we make. But again, everything's case by case. So you can't just say, I'm going to remove this condition and I'm afraid that you're going to sue me. It really is, everything's unique. Everything at the end of the day that you guys do can be up to council. So ultimately, your step one, the neighbors always have the chance to appeal it and kind of plead theirs with council as well. Okay. That's it.
Do we have any further questions? Anyone on Zoom? Anyone still on Zoom? Hearing none, I think we'll go ahead.
Questions?
What? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, saying no questions. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great. Well, with that, I think we'll close item 6, and thank Angela so much for her time, as always.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Andy.
Always instructive, and we appreciate it. And now I'll move to item 7, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. We have a few folks here that do it.
Go for it.
So we had 2 meetings focused really on the same things. It's just an administrative requirement, but we have the natural resource plan, the infrastructure plan, and then these ultimately kind of forming the broader Truckee Meadows Regional Plan update. And we're doing is having a series of meetings, one in City of Reno, one in Washoe County, one in Sparks, basically to make sure every jurisdiction of the public and we're focused weigh in on adoption of that plan. We have done City of Reno and Washoe County jurisdictions. And I can't remember the exact date. It gets early December. We'll have a final meeting in Sparks and recommend approval to the Regional Governance Board. So hopefully that, we may recommend approval. The TMRP folks are very hard to deliver that process. So that is going on through the end of the year at TMRK. So we'll close item 7, move to item 8, staff announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of announcements. Council states the Bella Vista Ranch PUD amendment and Cavalry Chapel zone change were both approved by City Council since our last meeting. And I mentioned previously, it looks as if we'll have a quorum for all of our scheduled upcoming meets. If you do change, please let Callie or Michelle know as soon as possible. Way we can applicants know for some reason we won't be having a quorum at the meetings. And that's all I had.
Thank you. We'll close item 8 into item 9. Commissioners' suggestions, future items. Do we have any? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close item 9 and open item 10, public comment. Do we have anyone on Zoom we speak on public comment?
Do you have a hand raised on Zoom? Tyler Colton?
Great.
Tyler, please state your for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Tyler Colton, thank you. I stay with you guys. So I appreciate you, everybody who asked questions to Angela regarding Title 18 of Entertainment. Angela, she does great work. There's so much doing, and I appreciate that. But Angela spelled out clearly to you guys, have now to go through Midtown, downtown, 4th Street, Brewery District, business by business, to figure out the hours in which those businesses initially created their hours. Because the capital license and attached hours, the business hours you initially signed your business plan with or licensing with. So they're having to use manpower to figure that out, which in code to enforce that would need to go pull up a master list and say, oh, this business like mine can till 1 p.m. Oh, this one can go 24 hours. Oh, this one can go till 2, which seems a little chaotic. Also, we're trying to grow Midtown, downtown. We are trying to empower small businesses and permit. This only adds additional $5,000 cost that then goes to the neighborhood input, to council, another 3-month process that costs $5,000 additionally to small business that potentially could not get approved. So once again, really asking that you consider and to council that we create entertainment zones, and maybe that is downtown, Virginia core through Midtown, Brewery District to start, because it's not adding up. It's a lot of work for planning. Doesn't talk to business and doesn't talk code when code is out enforcing the live entertainment rules that planning had set, but code doesn't understand them. And I said previously, there is a business, and I'm going to mention the name, that I have documentation that they just went to business and planning on Virginia Street and they are opening a new bar with no need to get additional use permit because they're in a commercial zone on Virginia Street. So it is unclear in Title 18 live entertainment, very unclear still. And I appreciate Angela, and I know they're working hard, but it is not clear, and I think you guys really need to address this and take it to council before the cleanup is done. Thank you again for letting me speak to you, and I appreciate your hard work.
For your comments, anyone in chamber wishing to speak under general public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Move to item 11, adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Have a night, y'all.
Thank you.